Chapter 1197. Sir Chairman, the representatives of the Fire Dragon tribe are here. Under Barnett's lead, 3 slightly thin and short human men walked into the room. Sui glanced at the 3 and nodded slightly. As early as in the report given by Barnett, the humans on the Demon Cloud continent were generally short and thin due to the lack of food. These 3 representatives were already considered tall in the Fire Dragon tribe, but if Sui stood up, their heads would at most be level with Suyi's nose. Hawacha. Sui greeted the 3 with a smile. This was the Fire Dragon tribe's language that meant hello and hello. Sui had specifically asked Barnett about the Fire Dragon tribe's language before, but it was impossible for him to completely learn it in such a short time. He could only barely grasp a few greetings. However, to Suyi's surprise, after replying to Sui with Hawacha, the leading man of the Fire Dragon tribe opened his mouth and spoke fluent signs common language. Respected Chairman Sui, it's an honor to meet you. The young man smiled and even performed a standard signs noble etiquette to Sui. Sui looked at him in surprise and then looked at Barnett. Barnett smiled and pointed at the young man and explained to Sui, Sir Chairman, the 3 of them are representatives specially selected by the Fire Dragon tribe. They are all proficient in our signs common language. You can communicate with them as you wish. Is that so? Sui looked at the 3 representatives in surprise. This Fire Dragon tribe was a human tribe that New Flyer accidentally discovered when they were expanding last year. Because they were all humans, the New Flyer immediately paid special attention to the Fire Dragon tribe after discovering them. They quickly established a cooperative relationship with the Fire Dragon tribe and recruited a group of Fire Dragon tribe members to work in the New Flyer. Sui didn't expect that in less than a year, the Fire Dragon tribe would be able to send out 3 representatives who were proficient in the common language of the signs. It was clear that they had put in a lot of effort for the New Flyer. Since all of you know how to speak the common language of signs, that makes things much easier. Sui smiled and nodded at the 3 of them. I wonder if you are familiar with the signs' language other than the language? The 3 of them looked troubled. The young man named Gonemo, who had just replied, shook his head. Our tribe didn't have any written language before, so it's very difficult for us to learn how to write again. The 3 of us don't have any problem speaking, but writing and reading are a bit difficult. Seeing Sui knit his brows, Gonemo immediately said, but we are all seriously studying, and I can already recognize close to 200 words. I believe that as long as I have some time, it won't be a problem for me to learn how to write. Not bad. Sui looked at Gonemo with a hint of admiration. He knew how difficult it was for people who didn't have any foundation in writing to learn how to read and write. Gonemo was able to master the common language of signs in less than a year, and even learn close to 200 words. Other than his talent in languages, the most important thing was that he worked hard. But if we don't know how to write, how are we going to sign a contract with you? Sui raised a question. Gonmo's eyes lit up, and a hint of excitement appeared on his face. However, he shook his head and said, Chairman Sui, as long as you're willing to help us, it doesn't matter even if we don't have a written contract. After a pause, he continued, and even if you break the contract, we don't have the ability to cause trouble for you, right? Sui paused for a moment, then smiled. You've thought this through. Since you know the result, will you still be willing to cooperate with us? Of course. Gonemo nodded without hesitation. Chairman Sui, with your strength, you can force us to do anything, but you want to cooperate with us. I don't know what you're thinking, but I know that there's no harm in cooperating with you. Are you sure there's no harm? Sui looked at him with amusement. Gonemo looked at Sui with a calm expression. If you didn't appear, our Fire Dragon tribe would have been wiped out by the goblins sooner or later. Do you think we still need to worry about any harm in cooperating with you? Gonemo said this as if it was only natural, and the expressions of his 2 companions didn't change at all. It was clear that this wasn't a surprise to them at all. Sui turned to look at Barnett. Barnett coughed lightly and said, Chairman, when the Chamber of Commerce's guards found the Fire Dragon tribe last year, they were besieged by tens of thousands of goblins. If it wasn't for the guards' help, I'm afraid the Fire Dragon tribe wouldn't exist now. Sui nodded and confirmed that Ganmo's words were true. He looked at the three short and thin natives of the Demon Cloud continent in front of him and couldn't help but feel a little emotional. They were all humans, and the humans of the signs had already become the masters of the signs. They had established countless countries and had a very good civilization. However, because the natives of the Demon Cloud continent were too weak, they were still stuck in such a backward civilization. Even a mere siege of tens of thousands of goblins was enough to cause the extinction of a human tribe of more than 2,000 people. It could be seen how difficult it was for these natives to survive on the Demon Cloud continent. However, Su-Yi was also very gratified. Before this, he had been worried that the natives of the Demon Cloud continent were backward in terms of civilization and intelligence. They were no different from primitive people. But now he found that in a small fire dragon tribe, there was someone with a flexible and clear mind like Ganmo. If his two companions were close to his level, then the intelligence of the natives of the fire dragon tribe should be something to look forward to. Su-Yi needed to recruit a large number of people in the Demon Cloud continent, and the main target would naturally be the natives here. However, if these natives had low intelligence and couldn't be trained, then Su-Yi wouldn't let them drag him down into the Chamber of Commerce. This wouldn't help the new flyer's development on the Demon Cloud continent. Now that he found out, he had more confidence in the Fire Dragon tribe and the natives of the Demon Cloud continent. As long as these natives had normal intelligence, then, after training, they could at least master some simple tasks and provide a lot of help to the new flyer. Ganmo, do you understand the content of our cooperation with your Fire Dragon tribe? Ganmo pondered for a moment and replied, "You need people to work for you, and we need you to provide protection for our tribe." "Yes, that's it." Su-Yi nodded with satisfaction. "As long as your Fire Dragon tribe is willing to listen to our arrangements, then our Chamber of Commerce will guarantee your safety. In addition, if you do well enough, I don't mind giving your tribe some extra help." Ganmo's eyes suddenly lit up. He had worked in the new flyer for more than half a year. In addition to mastering the sign's common language, he also had some rough understanding of the various mystical items controlled by the Shinfei Chamber of Commerce. He knew very well how powerful these humans who were said to have come from another continent were. Their strength was not only reflected in the fact that they could easily repel goblins dozens of times their number, but also reflected in every detail of their lives. In the past half a year, he had seen countless mystical items in the new flyer base that he had never even dreamed of before. The effects of many of these items could even be called miracles. If the new flyer was willing to provide protection for the Fire Dragon tribe, then the people of the tribe would no longer have to worry about the threat of the goblins. It was even more likely that they would have enough food and would no longer have to suffer from hunger and cold. To be able to have these benefits was already a great benefit for the Fire Dragon tribe. Not to mention, this Sir President in front of him had just said that he might provide some extra help. If he could let the Fire Dragon tribe have those mystical items, then Ganmo felt that no matter what price he had to pay, it would be worth it. Su-Yi could clearly see the hope and desire in Ganmo's eyes. Among the various races on the Magic Cloud continent, the status of humans was far inferior to the elves, dwarves, and gnomes. On the other hand, the elves, dwarves, and gnomes were always worried about the threat of the goblins, let alone these natives. The appearance of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce gave them the guarantee of survival and could even make them stronger. How could they not be filled with anticipation and desire for this? Of course, Su-Yi did not want to teach them too much. First, with their level of civilization, it would be difficult to grasp. Second, Su-Yi did not want these natives to become too powerful. In the end, he needed these people to help the new flyer expand, not to cause trouble for himself. Right, Ganmo, you seem to be working at a construction site of our Chamber of Commerce, right? Su-Yi asked again. Ganmo immediately nodded, yes. You don't have to do this work now. The cooperation between our Chamber of Commerce and your Fire Dragon tribe requires a middleman. You can take on this responsibility. Also, I hope that you could be my special consultant. I need someone to ask about some things on the Magic Cloud continent. Ganmo did not completely understand Su-Yi's meaning. For example, he did not know what a consultant was. However, He was very clear that Sui must have taken fancy to him. This was great news for him, so he did not hesitate at all. He directly knelt down and heavily kowtowed to Sui. Sui was not used to this etiquette, but he did not avoid it. He only slightly frowned and calmly accepted this big bow. If possible, he hoped that the natives of the Magic Cloud continent would all be in awe of him. Only this way would the development of the new flyer go smoothly. Chapter 1198. It was about 50,000 square kilometers. This was the area under the control of New Flyer's base in the Demon Cloud continent. It was also the largest sphere of influence they could control. With the power that New Flyer had invested in the Demon Cloud continent, they could expand their territory by wantonly attacking the goblins. However, if they expanded their territory, it would be difficult to take care of both sides. This was not a good thing for New Flyer. Therefore, after careful consideration, Sui decided to stop expanding and focus on stabilizing the area under his control. In addition to building a large number of roads and railways to cover all areas, making it easier to transport the guards and make it easier to control them, New Flyer was also recruiting a large number of people from the Demon Cloud continent. Before this, New Flyer had already recruited a large number of workers from the local elves, dwarves, halflings, and other races. However, these are different races after all. They were not like the other races in the signs, who had been cooperating with New Flyer for decades. It was difficult for the two sides to truly integrate. In comparison, the native humans of the Demon Cloud continent were more suitable. Although these indigenous humans were not as intelligent as humans due to their backward civilization, they still had the unique creativity and strong learning ability of the human race. So they were not bad at all. For example, last year when New Flyer discovered that the Fire Dragon tribe was backward, they recruited more than 500 barely qualified adult humans to work in the New Flyer. These people adapted in a short time, and there were even outstanding talents like Gonemo. If the same job was given to the native elves, it would take them several times longer to grasp it. After personally meeting the representatives of the Fire Dragon tribe, including Gonemo, Sui decided to vigorously win over the native humans of the Demon Cloud continent. Although it was inconvenient for the territory to continue expanding, this did not hinder the New Flyer guards from attacking. According to some information provided by the Fire Dragon tribe, the New Flyer guards searched in private for a period of time and found 3 other human tribes in further areas. Including the Fire Dragon tribe, the total population had exceeded 10,000 people. New Flyer directly moved these 3 human tribes to the territory controlled by New Flyer. Together with the Fire Dragon tribe, New Flyer gave them a piece of land and sent people to teach them how to farm. To these human tribes who could only rely on hunting and gathering wild fruits to survive, New Flyer's description of directly planting in the ground and harvesting food was like a myth. Almost no one believed it. However, not only did the New Flyer give them their territory, they even built houses for them and guaranteed their safety. How could they resist the New Flyer? Therefore, they would do whatever New Flyer arranged for them. They wouldn't dare to raise any objections. Just like what Gonemo said to Sui before, they were facing the danger of being exterminated at all times. Now that they could live such a peaceful life, it was already better than a dream. How could they ask for more? At the same time, New Flyer also picked out 2,000 suitable laborers from the 10,000 people and added them to the various basic jobs under the New Flyer's name. This allowed the previously formulated plan to progress rapidly. Perhaps inspired by Sui, the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce also recruited a large number of people to participate in their construction projects. However, there weren't many people to begin with. Most of the suitable ones were taken away by the New Flyer. There weren't many left for the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce. After a few days of futile effort, Chairman Cruz suddenly had an idea. He directly sent out the guards of the Merchant Association under his name and captured a total of 3,000 goblins in one go. He then scattered them and stuffed them into a few construction sites, forcing them to do the simplest of manual labor. Although goblins generally had average physical attributes and weren't very intelligent, they were still barely qualified to do these simple jobs. With the addition of these goblins, The progress of the construction projects under the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce actually increased significantly. President Cruz was beaming with joy every time he saw Sui. You see, Sui, I've already told you. No matter how stupid those goblins are, they can still do the simplest of jobs. Right now, I've already given the goblins the heavy and simple tasks of moving sand and cleaning the ground. The workers I've brought along can do the more technical work. It'll be much faster this way. Sue, he shook his head. You stuffed so many goblins in one go. Aren't you afraid that they'll cause trouble? President Cruz curled his lips. What's there to be afraid of? These goblins are very timid. They won't dare to resist after being scared. Moreover, I've placed a fully armed guard at each construction site. They can't cause trouble even if they want to. Sue, he still frowned slightly. In fact, he had thought of capturing the goblins and giving them easy and simple manual labor as a supplement. However, the quality of the goblins was too low. There was no room for cultivation, and the goblins were restless guys. If he wanted to prevent them from causing trouble, he had to arrange a large number of extra people. In fact, there were no benefits at all. Of course, the advantage of using goblins was that goblins could be seen almost everywhere on the Demon Cloud continent. There was a terrifying number of them, so there was no need to worry about the lack of manpower. President Cruz only brought 500 guards. If he brought more people, Sue-Yi was sure that he would definitely catch another batch of goblins. No matter what, we still have to be careful. Sue-Yi warned Chairman Cruz with a serious look. These goblins have no concept of loyalty. As long as you show a flaw, they will dare to cause trouble. Be careful that you don't cause any accidents. What's there to worry about? President Cruz laughed and patted Sue-Yi on the shoulder. Sue-Yi, you weren't like this before. You used to be much more radical than me. If it were you at that time, I'm afraid I didn't need to say anything. You would have already caught a lot of goblins, right? Sue-Yi shook his head, thinking that even if he was more radical, he wouldn't do that. The goblins weren't so honest guys. If he wanted them to be honest, he would have to put pressure on them. He didn't want to waste the most elite guards of the Chamber of Commerce on this kind of thing, so he didn't think about the goblins at all. After the two chatted for a while, President Cruz suddenly asked, "By the way, Sue-Yi, when are you going back? I've already arranged everything here in the main. If you don't have a follow-up plan, it's useless for me to stay here, so I'm thinking about whether to go back next month. What about you?" Me? Sue-Yi looked around and nodded. There's nothing for me to arrange here for the time being, but I don't plan to go back immediately. President Cruz was stunned. Since there's nothing for you to do here, why don't you go back? What are you doing here? You've been away from signs for so long. Aren't you worried about the signs? What do I have to worry about? Sue-Yi shrugged with a relaxed expression. Do you think that if I'm not here, people will dare to cause trouble for New Flyer? President Cruz rolled his eyes. Of course you don't have to worry about that. But aren't you worried that your Chamber of Commerce will make some mistakes when you're not here? I can't be here forever. For the Chamber of Commerce, this is also a chance to be tested. If they can do a good job, then I can travel around without worry in the future. I don't believe that you can stay idle. President Cruz snorted disdainfully, then his expression changed. By the way, the test you mentioned is Freya's postgraduate examination, right? She's almost 25 years old, so she has to quickly prepare to take over your position. No, I didn't mean that. He shook his head. It doesn't matter if Freya wants to take over or not. I'll let her. In fact, our new flyer has already become a large chamber of commerce with a stable structure. Even if I don't do anything, we can still operate as usual. Also, I dare say that as long as our Chamber of Commerce doesn't have any huge problems, we will continue to be strong. Do you believe me? Nonsense. President Cruz rolled his eyes. Why don't you look at how many industries your Chamber of Commerce has monopolized? As long as the magic machine industry exists, your Chamber of Commerce will continue to be strong. He revealed a faint smile. Although President Cruz's words were a bit exaggerated, they weren't far from the truth. The magic machine industry in signs was brought about by Sue-Yi and New Flyer. New Flyer had a far greater lead than other chambers of commerce and forces, and because of Sue-Yi's constant emphasis and insistence, New Flyer's technological advantage had not weakened at all, and had even become more profound with the passage of time. The current New Flyer might not be the strongest in one aspect, but it was definitely far superior in other aspects. Overall, there was no doubt that it was the strongest. Moreover, New Flyer had established an extremely solid brand image and signs. When everyone talked about the magic machine industry, they inevitably couldn't avoid New Flyer. Therefore, as long as the magic machine industry existed in signs, New Flyer would definitely occupy a place. Next month, I will also leave the Demon Cloud continent, but I won't return to signs. I will go to another place to deal with some things. President Cruz was just about to ask Sue where he was going to deal with some things, when suddenly there was a burst of hurried footsteps outside the room. The two turned their heads in surprise, and the door was knocked open with a bang. Barnett rushed in with a nervous expression and handed a document to Sue. Then he looked at President Cruz next to him, muttered to himself, and said in a deep voice, "President, there is news from signs. The Canla Empire has declared war on the Mana Magic Kingdom." Chapter 1199. Roman put down the newspaper in his hand and shifted his attention away from the words. The voices beside him once again entered his ears. I heard that the Canla Empire's army has already advanced more than 300 kilometers into the Mana Magic Kingdom. They even broke through Phelan City 2 days ago. TSK, when did this news come from? Aren't you a little too ignorant to come out and say it now? That's right. Who would still have the patience to listen to this news now? The Canla Empire is much stronger than the Mana Magic Kingdom. Isn't it normal for them to win? You only know that the Canla Empire won, but do you know why they agreed? The person who was refuted seemed to be unconvinced. How else could they win? Isn't it just because the Canla Empire's army has more people and better equipment? What other reason could there be? Nonsense. You only said that they have more people and better equipment. It's fine if they have more people, but what do you mean by better equipment? Do you understand? Better equipment obviously means... The person who answered hesitated for a moment before reluctantly continuing. Of course, it's because the Canla Empire's army has more military magic machines. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to advance more than 300 kilometers into the Mana Magic Kingdom in such a short time. Then tell me, why would the Canla Empire's army have more military magic machines than the Mana Magic Kingdom's army? You must know that the military magic machines that New Flyer sold to every country are actually more or less the same. There isn't much of a difference at all. About this... you don't know about this, right? Let me tell you, I heard that the Canla Empire has actually been secretly developing military magic machines these past few years. The moment this sentence came out, the small tavern that was bustling with noise immediately fell into silence. Roman's gaze secretly swept through the crowd. He couldn't help but laugh when he saw the strange expression on everyone's face that said they understood but couldn't say it out loud. The speculation about the Canla Empire secretly researching and manufacturing military magic machines had actually surfaced a few years ago. However, it had always been a casual guess in private conversations, and not many people really believed it. After all, the Frestac Chamber of Commerce had been restricting the flow and development of military magic machines for the past 10 years. There wasn't a single country on the continent that would risk offending the Frestac Chamber of Commerce to develop military magic machines. As for whether they had them in secret or not, that was another matter. Recently, accurately speaking, around half a month ago, this rumor had spread across the Signs continent. It had already become a fact that most people recognized, so it couldn't be called a rumor anymore. The reason was very simple. The Canla Empire declared war on the Mana Magic Kingdom, and in the official war between the two empires, they took out a huge amount of military magic machines that far exceeded the imagination of the outside world. Many of the military magic machines were not even on the list that New Flyer had sold to other empires. This was simply equivalent to publicly announcing to the public that they were secretly researching and developing military magic machines. In comparison, the Canla Empire had obviously invested more in this aspect, and their research was more in-depth. Perhaps they were one step ahead of the others in the research. Therefore, The number of military magic machines equipped by the Kamla Empire's military was obviously far greater than the Mana Magic Kingdom's. In addition, the Kamla Empire's military strength was originally much stronger, so naturally, they had the upper hand. In just half a month's time, the Mana Magic Kingdom suffered several defeats and was forced to give up a large portion of their territory. In the hearts of the citizens of the Signs Continent, after 11 years of peace, the Signs Continent suddenly having a war made people feel a bit unsettled. However, as long as it wasn't related to them, they could treat it as a show and didn't care that much. It was even more so for the surrounding civilians of the Malar Empire. The Kamla Empire chose to start a war with the Mana Magic Kingdom. No matter if they won or lost, the Malar Empire would still gain some benefits from it. If they lost, needless to say, even if they won, because of the new flyer, the Kamla Empire couldn't really expand the war to an unmanageable situation. Perhaps the Kamla Empire would also be punished by the new flyer because of the large amount of military magic machines that they had secretly researched and developed. That wouldn't be worth the loss. However, the civilians of the Malar Empire could happily put on an attitude of watching a show, but Roman wasn't so relaxed. As an employee of the new flyer, he was actually very puzzled by the reaction of the upper echelons of the Chamber of Commerce after the Kamla Empire and the Mana Magic Kingdom started the war. It was reasonable to say that with the attitude of the new flyer for more than 10 years, and also because of the insistence of the president, Su-yi, the Kamla Empire rashly chose to start a war with the Mana Magic Kingdom. They were bound to be warned by the new flyer and forced to stop the war. Even if the Mana Magic Kingdom had angered the president and caused the new flyer to announce a complete withdrawal from the Mana Magic Kingdom, but with the president's usual style, when it came to such a big matter, he wouldn't be the least bit careless. But the fact was that the war between the two sides had been going on for more than half a month, and the new flyer was abnormal and didn't have any reaction at all. Even if several newspapers came to the door and wanted the new flyer to give an official opinion, they only received a uniform reply. That was, the new flyer, as a chamber of commerce, had no intention of interfering in the affairs of other countries, so they didn't have any opinion on this matter. No opinion? What a joke. If this was the case, what was the new flyer doing for more than 10 years? But the new flyer was really indifferent to this and didn't make any statement. In the eyes of many people, this was simply an expression of tacit agreement. There were even many people who suspected that the new flyer had reached an agreement with the Kamla Empire in private, facilitating the Kamla Empire to invade the Mana Magic Kingdom. Otherwise, why would the new flyer announce a complete withdrawal from the Mana Magic Kingdom? And most importantly, why would Chairman Su-yi simply leave the Signs a few months ago and run to the Magic Cloud Continent that was tens of thousands of kilometers away from here? All of this was premeditated by the new flyer. Thinking of the remarks he heard yesterday, Roman's face sank. He himself was a member of the new flyer, and he was also a middle-level manager. Naturally, he was more familiar with the internal situation of the new flyer than outsiders. For the Kamla Empire's sudden declaration of war against the Mana Magic Kingdom, the Chamber of Commerce didn't have any special reaction. Everything was carried out as usual, as if this matter didn't have any effect at all. It was just that when the Chamber of Commerce's staff discussed in private, they felt that the Chamber of Commerce's reaction was a bit strange. In any case, the Chamber of Commerce didn't make any statement about the war between the two countries, which was really strange. Everyone knew that the new flyer currently had a strong influence on all the countries in the Signs, and when it came to the military, it almost had a decisive power. As long as the new flyer made a statement, or even simply made a move, then the Kamla Empire could only stop while they were ahead. It was impossible for them to continue to expand their offensive and invade the Mana Magic Kingdom. Maybe it's really because the president isn't here? Roman's mind turned to speculate. He suddenly thought of another thing. This time, the president personally led a team to the Demon Cloud Continent. Not only did he bring a large number of magic forums, as well as personnel and supplies, but he also took away a full 5,000 elite guards of the Chamber of Commerce. Although compared to the current total number of new flyer guards that exceeded 40,000, Taking away 5,000 guards wasn't enough to hurt them, but it was more or less a kind of impact, indicating the weakening of the Chamber of Commerce's armed forces. The most important thing was that after the president took away these guards, he unintentionally revealed an attitude. The power of the new flyer was temporarily weakened, and the suppression of the other countries on the continent was naturally weakened. It just so happened that Sue, the core member of the Chamber of Commerce, wasn't here. Didn't this mean that the other countries could take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something? No. What if the president didn't mean it? This thought suddenly flashed through Roman's mind, and his face instantly turned pale. If the president didn't mean it and did this on purpose, then the consequences would be too serious. Roman forcefully shook his head and threw this dangerous thought out of his mind. No, as long as the new flyer was here, the other countries on the continent wouldn't dare act rashly. After all, it wasn't like the president wouldn't come back. As long as he came back, he could just casually say a word, and the Kamla Empire would obediently stop fighting. There was no other choice. But the president was gone for close to half a year. When would he be back? Roman looked up and looked to the west through the window. The president was over 10,000 kilometers away from him. Even with the speed of the magic airship, it would take him 2.5 days to cross this distance. So how could it be that easy to come back? Then again, according to the information from the high-level members of the Chamber of Commerce, the president would be staying in Signs for a long time, and his return date wasn't set. While he was thinking, there was a tall figure that suddenly appeared at the door of the tavern. It blocked the light that came in, and the tavern became dark. The figure stood at the door for a bit before turning around and walking in Roman's direction. Without waiting for him to come close, Roman recognized him with a single glance. This person was his most capable assistant, one of the managers of the school's promotion plan, Aloyo. Aloyo came over and took the wine cup from Roman's hand, slamming it down on the table as he reprimanded. "I knew that you would be slacking off here. All right, quickly come with me. The Lord City Lord wants to see us now." Chapter 1200. Roman and Aloyo came to Waterland City, the capital of the Malar Empire's central province, with a simple mission. They were only in charge of promoting the new Flyers college education model, and they planned to cooperate with the Governor-General of the central province to build some new colleges in the province. These new colleges would all imitate the new Flight colleges model. Unlike the traditional mage college, they would teach all kinds of basic knowledge to build a foundation for the students. If one had to describe it, it would be similar to the elementary and middle schools on Earth. The biggest difference was that the knowledge learned in elementary and middle schools on Earth was related to natural science and technology theory, while the ones taught in these colleges were related to magical science theory. As the research on the magic industry and signs became more in-depth, the research on magical science theory also became more in-depth and detailed. If a child wanted to become a mage now, they would no longer learn directly from mastering magic like in the past. Instead, they would learn from the most basic knowledge, such as mathematics, physics, chemistry, and so on. They would only start to come into contact with magic after they had developed a general scientific concept. The disadvantage of this was that the students might need to study for many years before they could truly master magic. However, the advantage of doing so was that every student had the possibility of mastering magic through learning. Even if they couldn't master the ability to cast magic by themselves like the mages in the past, they could still master other related skills through various learning and find a suitable job from there. With the magic industry still developing rapidly in the signs, there was no need to worry about not having a place to use it. This education model was previously only promoted in the New Flight College. Although the other countries also followed suit, the effects were naturally far inferior to the New Flight College. Hence, this time, the new flyer took the initiative to share this new education model, and the other countries welcomed it. The Malar Empire was one of the first batch of partners that the new flyer chose to cooperate with. As early as 3 months ago, both sides had already reached a consensus and signed a cooperation agreement. Hence, this time, Roman and Aloyo didn't come to Waterland City to seek the approval of the governor of the central province. Instead, they came directly to discuss the details of the cooperation. Given their identities, the governor of the central province didn't need to meet them personally. Instead, the governor sent a representative to cooperate with the castellan of Waterland City to have a preliminary discussion. They decided to build a college in Waterland City as a trial run. As the general strategy had already been decided, there wasn't much to talk about between the two parties. They only had a simple discussion on some of the details, and things were quickly settled. However, when they were leaving, the representative vaguely mentioned the Canla Empire's invasion of the Mana Magic Kingdom to Roman, and tried to ask the new flyer's opinion on this matter. Roman naturally couldn't tell him anything. The representative of the governor's office did not pursue the matter. Both parties chatted casually for a while before leaving. On the way back to his residence, Roman's residence. "What do you think?" Sir Chairman is thinking. Aloyo deeply knit his brows, as if this problem had been bothering him for a long time. Even if he didn't expect the Canla Empire to be this bold, attacking the Marlow Magic Kingdom as soon as he left, the news was sent by the fastest magic airship as soon as possible. Sir Chairman should already know about this, so why hasn't he reacted yet? Roman looked at him, and after thinking for a bit, he said in a low voice, "Before leaving the headquarters, I received news that Sir Chairman had sent a message back last week." "Oh, what do you mean?" Aloyo's expression immediately changed. Aloyo's expression changed. Did he have the company warn the Canla Empire to stop? If that was the case, do you think that the Canla Empire would still attack the Mana Magic Kingdom? Roman asked back. Aloyo thought for a bit before knitting his brows again. Then what does Sir Chairman want to do? Could it be that it's like those people said, that he made a secret agreement with the Canla Empire to destroy the Mana Magic Kingdom? Roman immediately glared at him. "How could you say this?" Glancing around cautiously, Aloyo coughed softly and continued. "Then, what exactly did he say?" Roman shook his head with a confused look on his face. "According to the news I received, Sir Chairman's meaning is to not care about anything." "Not care about anything?" Aloyo raised his voice. "How could that be? We are the new flyer." Roman gave a helpless sigh. "Be quiet. How can we know what Sir Chairman is thinking? But since he sent this order back, he must have a deep meaning." "Deep meaning?" Aloyo shook his head, as the doubt on his face showed that he didn't believe it. Sir Chairman has always emphasized that he hopes that signs will always be peaceful. That way it will be more beneficial to the development of the magic machine industry. Now that the Kandra Empire is at war with the Mana Magic Kingdom, this is one of the top countries on the continent. How could it be considered peaceful? Are you saying that you want to blame this on the president as well? Roman rolled his eyes at him. Aloyo didn't dare to blame Sue. He could only remain silent. Roman sighed and shook his head gently. In fact, he felt that Aloyo's words made some sense. The president's previous decisions, as well as his choice of timing to go to the Demon Cloud continent, seemed to be very difficult to completely remove from suspicion. However, this brought him back to the terrible result that he had thought of before. If the chairman did this on purpose, then the peace and stability that Signs had maintained for 11 years would be gone. If that was the case, was this continent going to be chaotic? Hashtag. To put it bluntly, no matter how chaotic Signs is, what does it have to do with us? Enchantment knocked on the table in front of him. His expression was very impassioned, but his words were cold. "We're just a chamber of commerce. The other countries can fight whoever they want. As long as it doesn't affect our business, it has nothing to do with us." When these words fell into the ears of the other new flyer executives in the conference room, they immediately frowned. "Enchantment, you can't say that, right?" The chairman of the Sheenfei Mining Chamber of Commerce, Iron Thorpe, said with a heavy nasal voice, "The other countries have started a war, which will definitely affect the business of our Chamber of Commerce. Just like this time, although the war is mainly concentrated in the Mana Magic Kingdom, it still affected more than a dozen mines that have a little relationship with the Mana Magic Kingdom. If the war continues for a long time, our mine production next month will decline." "Yes, Enchantment, don't tell me that your household magic machine department isn't affected. Anyway, our magic car department has already been affected. The order from the Kamla Empire was cancelled, and they didn't even give us an explanation. That's because your magic card department isn't strong enough. Otherwise, why wouldn't the Kamla Empire give you an explanation? Enkato gave a laugh. As for our household magic machine department, it is also affected, but it isn't a hindrance. That is now. If there are more countries fighting in the future, do you think it will be a hindrance? Enkato looked over everyone before saying with a laugh, "You seem to be certain that there will be more countries that won't settle down? Isn't this an obvious matter?" Lee Sop had the explosive temper of the dwarves, so he slapped the table when he heard this and shouted, "Those fellows are secretly developing military magic machines. Perhaps each country has quite a few of them. Before, Sir Chairman was here, so no one dared to cause trouble. Now that Sir Chairman is finally gone from Signs, they definitely won't let go of this chance. Look, didn't the Kamla Empire appear?" Everyone looked at each other before nodding. The matter of the other countries secretly developing military magic machines wasn't a secret in the eyes of the new Flyer high-level members. Sui never said anything about this before, so everyone ignored it. Now that Sui wasn't here and the Kamla Empire had jumped out, perhaps the other countries wouldn't be able to hold back. So what are you planning to do? Send the company's guards to drive the Kamla Empire's army back and have them stop fighting? Enkato asked back. Everyone was silent. If it was in the past, the new Flyer might have done this. But now that Suyi's attitude was ambiguous and the new Flyer had announced that they would withdraw from the Mana Magic Kingdom, it would be hard to convince others and even harder for the Kamla Empire to accept it. Moreover, with Sui not here, the other high-level members of the company didn't have the qualifications to mobilize a large number of guards. Moreover, in the message that Sui sent back last week, he only said that this matter was between the two countries and had nothing to do with the company. This also showed his attitude. Enkato paused before asking, "Do you still not understand Sir Chairman's thoughts? It's just that with the strength of our new Flyer, 10 years of suppressing the other countries is already a long time. We can't keep suppressing them like this. Sooner or later, they will have other thoughts and become chaotic. We can't do anything about it. Moreover, this isn't something that a company like us should do, right?" Everyone understood this reasoning, but in the past 10 years, they had already gotten used to the new Flyer being above the other countries in terms of signs, so it was hard for them to accept it. But why did you choose this time? Maybe it's been too long and you've all forgotten. Enkato smiled as if he already knew. When the Continental Peace Treaty was first signed, there was a time limit. Chapter 1201. The war between the Kamla Empire and the Mana Magic Kingdom was still ongoing. However, even though the Kamla Empire had a greater advantage on the battlefield, facing the Mana Magic Kingdom, which was second only to the two empires, it was impossible to destroy the Mana Magic Kingdom through a war. Therefore, how long the war would last and how it would end up would depend on what the Kamla Empire wanted to achieve. Most of the other countries in the Signs were watching from the sidelines. There were also many people who were waiting for the new Flyer's true stance. No one believed that the new Flyer would really do what they said and completely ignore the war between the two countries. If that was really the case, then it meant that the new Flyer had directly given up the powerful influence that they had over the Signs for the past 10 years. This would be extremely disadvantageous for the new Flyer. Even if the new Flyer, especially the president, Sui, had a somewhat ambiguous attitude, people still hoped to see how the Chamber of Commerce would react. Therefore, under the expectations of countless people, the new Flyer finally made some kind of response. However, unlike what everyone thought, the new Flyer's response was not to directly involve the Kamla Empire and the Mana Magic Kingdom in the war. Instead, in the official name of the new Flyer, they made an announcement that they hoped to protect the civilians who suffered in the war. Then, they organized a large rescue team and directly sent it to the border of the Mana Magic Kingdom and the Kamla Empire. This decision was really strange, and no one could understand it. If the new Flyer really wanted to intervene in this war, then why didn't they just directly send a warning to both sides, or even let the new Flyer's guards intervene and directly force them to stop the war? Now, they sent a so-called rescue team with unknown meaning. What was the purpose of this? Under everyone's close attention, the rescue team sent by the new Flyer actually really observed what the new flyers announcement said before. They only extended a helping hand to the civilians of the Mana Magic Kingdom who had suffered losses because of the war. They provided them with all kinds of assistance and helped them to stabilize their lives. Other than that, they didn't do anything else. This action in the eyes of many people caused a wave of hypocrisy accusations. If a new flyer really wanted to help the civilians of the Mana Magic Kingdom, then why didn't they directly force both sides to stop the war? And if they didn't want to intervene, then why did they send a rescue team? This was simply self-contradictory. Regarding these accusations, the new flyer still didn't make any response. But the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's rescue team had played quite a role. Many civilians of the Mana Magic Kingdom who had to flee because of the war saved their lives because of the timely rescue of the new flyer's rescue team. They were extremely grateful to the new flyer. And whether it was the Kamla Empire or the Mana Magic Kingdom, they tacitly agreed not to say a word about the new flyer's actions. They also never obstructed the new flyer's rescue team's actions and allowed the rescue team to collect civilians. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. President, what good does this do for our Chamber of Commerce? Barnett looked at the message sent by the Chamber of Commerce headquarters from signs in his hand. He was puzzled. If you don't want those civilians to suffer because of kindness, then you can just ask the Kamla Empire to stop the war. And if you want to punish the Mana Magic Kingdom, then you can just ignore it and avoid being blamed. Barnett still had some words that he didn't say. From his point of view, Su Yi's current actions were simply indecisive. It was completely different from his previous style of doing things. Su Yi tilted his head and glanced at him. He smiled faintly. Do you think that our Chamber of Commerce can always make those countries and signs listen to us? Barnett was silent. Of course, he had thought about this question before. He also knew that Su Yi had asked a few of his colleagues, so he knew what the answer was. But to say this in front of Su Yi, it was a bit hard for him. Even if we don't make them completely obedient, at least we have to make them have no choice but to be wary of our new flyer, right? No, you're mistaken about one thing. Su Yi shook his head. I've said it many times. We are only a Chamber of Commerce, and I'm only an ordinary merchant. With just our Chamber of Commerce, it's impossible to make those countries and signs listen to us. With just me as a merchant, it's impossible to make everyone listen to my orders. That's because you don't want to. Barnett couldn't help but mutter. From many people's point of view, as long as Su Yi was willing, with the powerful battle strength of the new flyer guards, as well as the terrifying influence of the new flyer, Su Yi could have become the Grand Duke of the Principality of Constantine 20 years ago. Then he could have used this to forge ahead and continuously raise his status. Even if he couldn't unify all of signs in 20 years, Su Yi could have become the emperor of a brand new empire. It wouldn't be any worse than the two empires now. But from the start, he didn't seem to have much desire for power. Not only did he give up on controlling the Principality of Constantine, he also gave up countless opportunities to become the overlord of the continent. This made everyone extremely confused. In this world, it was impossible for someone without any desire for power to exist. Su Yi clearly had such strength and opportunity, so why did he give it up? Barnett's words obviously didn't escape Su Yi's ears. He knew his subordinates' thoughts like the back of his hand, but he only smiled lightly when he heard this. He had actually made his pursuit very clear to many people, but until now, no one could fully understand. Yes, of course he had the opportunity and the ability to dominate all of signs. But this was meaningless to him. He was obviously interested in power, but from his point of view, even if he could control all of signs, this signs was completely in a backward semi-slave and semi-feudal era. What was the point of controlling it in his hands? As a person who transmigrated from modern Earth, Su Yi couldn't fully adapt to this backward world no matter how many years had passed. So he had always been obsessed with developing the magic machine industry, hoping that one day this world civilization could catch up to Earth's. This idea, at first, was just a fantasy that existed in his mind, and Su Yi felt that he would never have the chance to achieve it in this lifetime. But in the past 10 years, the research on the magic machine industry and signs had been progressing rapidly. In just 10 years, the degree of civilization and science had taken a huge leap forward, and the standard of living of ordinary people was even comparable to the standard of living of Earth in the 1860s and 1870s. In the past 2 years, the research on magic core energy had even allowed Sue E to discover the possibility of surpassing Earth's technological civilization. In this situation, how could Sue E want to waste time on a thankless task that might cause the Sign's continent civilization to regress on the road of hegemony? If he had the time, he would rather research magic technology and strive to fly to space one day earlier. Besides, even if they really wanted to compete for hegemony, wasn't there a vast land that was much simpler than the Sin's continent right in front of them? Of course, these thoughts could not be explained to Barnett. Sue E pondered for a moment and said to Barnett, "If the countries in Signs want to fight, then let them fight. Anyway, no matter how much trouble they make, it will not affect the development of our Chamber of Commerce and Signs. No matter what happens to Signs in the end, no matter how many countries are destroyed or how many rise, it has nothing to do with our Chamber of Commerce." Barnett looked seriously at the expression on Sue Yi's face, and after confirming that he was not joking, he became even more puzzled. He did not know why, but since Sue E came to the Magic Cloud continent, every time he talked with him, Barnett would feel that every time the president talked about Signs, he always had an indifferent look, as if it had nothing to do with him. Could it be that, because he was far away from Signs, his heart was also far away? Impossible. Barnett immediately shook his head. Signs was the foundation of the New Flyer, and the New Flyer was the product of the president's painstaking efforts. It was impossible for the president to give up Signs in any case. Barnett did not continue to ask, and Sue E naturally did not explain. The main content of his conversation with Barnett this time had nothing to do with Signs, but was about how to make use of the manpower in the Magic Cloud continent. Although the manpower sent by the New Flyer to the Magic Cloud continent, as well as the other people who came with the New Flyer, was close to 100,000. But compared to the huge land of 50,000 square kilometers they now controlled, it was still pitifully small. Therefore, it was imperative to increase manpower. It was not realistic to pull people from Signs, because it was too far away from Signs. Not many people were willing to abandon their hometown to live so far away. What's more, the Magic Cloud continent was still a barbaric and backward place in the impression of many people who would be willing to come and suffer. Therefore, if he wanted to solve the manpower problem, he must start with the Magic Cloud continent itself. Before that, the New Flyer had been recruiting the local indigenous races, and all the human tribes that were discovered later were absorbed. But they added up to no more than 10,000 people, which was still far from enough. So Sue E set his mind on the deeper parts of the Magic Cloud continent, intending to pull in all the intelligent races in other places to work for the New Flyer. And to solve this problem, the first thing was to find those indigenous tribes and get in touch with them. During this time, Sue E has been presiding over this work. Chapter 1202. Sue Yi's method wasn't strange. He was taking 2 routes at the same time. The first was to have the tribes recruited by the New Flyer contact all the other tribes that they could contact. Although the civilization of the Demon Cloud continent was limited by the Goblins' rampage, making it so that the contact range of each tribe was very small, if they kept contacting each other, it would be like a spider web that would connect more and more tribes. As for those tribes, would they be willing to come? So he didn't need to worry about this problem at all. These indigenous tribes on the Demon Cloud continent had always been troubled by the goblins. Coupled with their own low productivity, it was difficult for them to continue with the basic survival and food problems. How could they refuse a great opportunity that could allow them to obtain safety and not lack food and clothing? Even if they had their doubts, with such a good chance in front of them, they would at least send people to take a look. Once they found out, it was impossible for them not to come. The first route was a bit passive, but the second route was much more active. Sue E sent out almost all the magic airships and had them search the outside world from high up in the sky. Once they found traces of other intelligent native tribes, they would immediately mark them. After reporting back, Su-yi would send out another group of Frestec Chamber of Commerce guards to take care of the threats along the way and find that native tribe. Whether it was through bribery or coercion, he would think of a way to have the tribe move over. In just the last 3 months, the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's guards had gone out over 20 times because of this. The furthest they went was over 700 kilometers away from the base, bringing back a human tribe. With these two routes going on at the same time, the new flyer had already recruited over 20,000 locals in the last 3 months. But these people who had been recruited were faced with a large problem. These intelligent races that lived on the Demon Cloud continent, whether it was the humans, the elves, or the dwarves, they all had a certain level of civilization and almost all had their own language. But not only was it lacking compared to the Signs continent's previous level, it was even more lacking compared to the current level of the Signs continent. Every native that came to the new flyer base for the first time would be shocked by the various scenes in front of them. Even if it was the simplest magic fan, it would make them call a miracle. With this large difference in civilization, even if the new flyer obtained these people, it would be hard for them to play a role. Just the problem of communicating with different languages would take a large amount of time to solve. Because of this, while gathering more people, Su-yi also promoted the Signs language as the base's common language, forcing the locals to seriously study it. In Su-yi's plan, after the most basic communication problem was solved, he planned on having these locals learn the magic machine industry knowledge. Only in this way could they play a better role. Otherwise, if he only needed some people who could do simple things, it would be much easier to learn from the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce and catch a group of goblins to force them to work. Different from the goblins, most of these native races could be considered an intelligent race. There were even some that weren't low in civilization, but because they had been suppressed by the goblins, they couldn't fully develop. For example, there was a tribe of elves that could use relatively crude magic. If it wasn't for the fact that there were too few elves, Su-yi believed that they could have driven out all the goblins and control the continent. New Flyer wouldn't have come here to take over. Of course, this crude magic wasn't worth mentioning in front of the incomparably powerful magic technology that the New Flyer brought. This tribe of elves that had hopes of becoming the main characters of the Demon Cloud continent had already become a subsidiary of the New Flyer. As time passed bit by bit, the development of the New Flyer base on the Demon Cloud continent changed with each passing day because of the help of the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce. Factories were quickly built and then put into production. Su-yi had been in the Demon Cloud continent for nearly a year in the blink of an eye. The base had almost completely changed compared to when Su-yi first arrived. In the base, factories representing every industry were basically in place. Although the scale wasn't large, with the current degree of industrial integrity, it was enough to ensure self-sufficiency even without the aid of signs. Of course, Su-yi's ultimate goal was to expand these industries to the entire Demon Cloud continent. It was just that this would take a lot of time and couldn't be rushed. Su-yi had been in the Demon Cloud continent for nearly a year in one breath, so naturally, he couldn't stay like this forever. On an ordinary day, an unexpected communication came, which made Su-yi understand that it was time for him to leave the Demon Cloud continent and return to Signs. "Hey, President, guess who I am?" Hearing the energetic and somewhat playful voice coming from the magic communicator, Su-yi smiled slightly at first, but then he was surprised. "Akali? Have you finished setting up the signal beacons?" Akali was, of course, still on the space island at the moment, and the space island was more than 4,000 kilometers away from here. Akali could talk to him directly through the magic communicator, so there was only one possibility. The high-altitude magic signal beacons she had been developing had been successful. There was a burst of triumphant laughter from the magic communicator. "It's done. How is it?" "Sir President, isn't it fast?" "Yes, it's fast." Su-yi nodded again and again. "I thought it would be impossible for you to finish it in a few years. I didn't expect you to only spend, less than 2 years, and you actually finished it. It's really a surprise. Akali, when we go back, I must reward you." "Tisuke, I don't care about rewards. I just need President to fulfill the promise you made to me before." "Promise?" What promise? Su-yi was stunned. You really forgot. Akali snorted. You said before that as long as I finished this mission, you would let me pick an island and give it to me as my vacation spot. What? Now you want to go back on your word? Su-yi's mind spun and remembered that he seemed to have promised Akali this before. At that time, Akali and Evita had come to Su-yi's house as guests. When the two of them were discussing vacation spots with Steel, Su-yi mentioned that the island on the endless sea had better scenery and was very quiet. It was much better than any vacation spot. Su-yi didn't remember what they talked about after that, but now that Akali mentioned it, she probably tricked him. Of course, this was a small matter. With New Flyer's current wealth, developing an island for Akali wasn't difficult. No, I wouldn't dare to go back on my word. Good, you can pick any island on the endless sea. I can give it to you. Su-yi waved his hand and agreed in a domineering manner. The islands on the endless sea weren't like the islands on Earth, all of which had owners. If Akali liked something, it wouldn't be hard for Su-yi to get someone to take it. So how could it be hard? Then it's settled. President, seeing that you're so straightforward, I won't keep you in suspense. You must want to talk to Steel right now, right? Su-yi smiled. After coming to the Demon Cloud continent, because it was tens of thousands of kilometers away, communication and transportation were not so convenient. He could only communicate with Steel through the fleet, but there was no way to communicate with Steel at any time like on the signs. Naturally, he missed Steel and his family very much. The moment he received Akali's communication, he realized that since Akali could communicate with him from a space island more than 4,000 kilometers away, she must be able to communicate with the signs more than 6,000 kilometers away from the space island. And the magic signal beacon she was researching certainly had a magic signal transfer function. So it was obvious that Su-yi had no problem communicating with the signs here. Achieving instant communication between the two continents was the original intention of Akali to develop this high-altitude magic signal beacon. Can it connect? Su-yi asked again. Of course, wait a moment. Akali responded, and then there was a buzzing sound from the magic communicator. Obviously, Akali was transferring the signal. After a while, there was another buzzing sound from the magic communicator, and then a voice full of doubt sounded. Hello, is this Su-yi? Although the voice was not very clear, Su-yi recognized it as soon as he heard it, and he was overjoyed. Hey, Steel, it's me. Su-yi did not suppress the excitement in his heart, so his voice trembled a little. It's really you. Steel's voice was also full of uncontrollable excitement. Great. Su-yi, I finally heard your voice again. Are you okay? Su-yi took a deep breath and laughed. I'm fine, don't worry. How about you? And your family? How are they? As soon as Su-yi's voice fell, a clear and pleasant voice sounded from the magic communicator. Dad, it's so good to hear your voice again. I miss you so much. When are you coming back? I'm going to be 25 years old soon. You must come back before then. Freya? Hearing this voice, Su-yi's smile became even brighter. Don't worry, I'll definitely come back before your new birthday. But have you thought about how you'll answer me that day? Chapter 1203. After a moment of silence and a magic communicator, Freya snorted. I'll tell you on my birthday. Su-yi laughed and suddenly changed his tone. Akali, stop eavesdropping. Tell me, is it possible to communicate through video? I want to see Steel and Freya right now. The exclamations of the three people came from the magic communicator at the same time. After a while, Akali's slightly embarrassed voice came. Well, Mr. President, it's already very good that we can transmit sound signals here. As for video communication, let's wait patiently. Su-yi nodded, not surprised at all. After chatting with Steel, Freya, and the other family members who came later for a while, this commemorative super long-distance communication between the two continents finally came to an end. However, the moment Su-yi hung up the communication, the magic communicator rang again. Mr. President, Akali's voice came again. We've made some new discoveries about those ruins. Come and take a look when you have time. Oh, new discoveries so soon? Su-yi was a bit surprised this time. Yes, we've found. Akali paused. It's not convenient to talk about it like this. Let's talk about it when you come. Okay. After putting down the magic communicator, Suyi's eyes flashed with a hint of expectation. The research about the Abyss Devils was partly because he was curious about this legendary civilization of the previous generation, and partly because Su-yi wanted to figure out what exactly happened when the Abyss Devils left this world. Since the legends of the various races on the Signs continent had confirmed that the Abyss Demon race had left this world, even the dragons and elves knew quite a few details. It was certain that this matter wasn't just a legend, but rather it was real. However, the explanation of leaving this world itself was not detailed in the legends of the various races. Sui guessed that it wasn't because the records were missing, but because the ancestors of these races didn't understand what was going on at all. They only vaguely understood that the abyssal demons had left this world. The reason was not difficult to guess. It was because the ancestors of these races belonged to the lower class of the civilization at that time. Naturally, they did not understand what the abyssal demons were doing. And, judging from the ruins previously discovered, the level of civilization of the abyss demons was already quite high. Then, the method they carried out to leave this world might be the hyperspace jump that Earth's technology was still far from reaching. In fact, when it came to hyperspace jump, the technology on Earth couldn't do it. On the contrary, the backward signs already had a similar ability long ago, and that was the spatial teleportation magic that could only be mastered by archmages. Teleportation magic could allow a magician to teleport their entire body and their belongings to a distant location in an instant. It could be said that this was a very typical hyperspace jump phenomenon. But the magicians of the signs could only be considered scratching the surface of this teleportation magic. They could use it, but they didn't understand the principles behind it at all. So at most they could teleport themselves a few kilometers away, but they couldn't do anything else. Only in the past few years, with the foundation of the magic science that Su-yi proposed, they had gradually deepened their understanding. But compared to the abyssal demons going to another world, it was still far from being on the same level. Su-yi wanted to study the ruins of the abyssal demons in order to find the secrets within, so that he could grasp the true hyperspace jump technology. As for the goal of studying this technology, Su-yi looked up at the sun in the sky that was much bigger than the sun on Earth, but it wasn't as strong as the sun on Earth. His lips curled into a bitter smile. Even if I can really do hyperspace jump in the vast universe, how can I find Earth? Hashtag. Half a month later, the magic airship that Su-yi was sitting in slowly landed on the space island. When the door opened, Akali rushed in and blocked Su-yi, who was about to leave. Let's take off again. Here, these are the coordinates. Fly this way. Akali gave the coordinates to the pilot of the magic airship before pulling Su-yi back into the cabin. Su-yi looked over Akali in confusion. Why did she seem more excited than him? Hey, Sir Chairman, do you know what we've discovered during this time? Akali asked with an excited look. Su-yi gave a shrug. I haven't seen anything yet. How do I know what you've discovered? Akali gave a laugh, like she already expected Su-yi to say this. She reached out to sweep the things on the table to the side before taking out several blueprints from her bag and spreading them out on the table. Look, this is the ruin we found the first time, right? Akali pointed at the first piece of paper as she spoke. Su-yi looked down and found that on the blueprint, it was the pillar they found the first time they explored the ruins, so he nodded. Didn't you say last time that this pillar was a precise instrument? Seeing Su-yi nod again, Akali took out the first blueprint and revealed the following one. Look, this is what we found out about the situation inside the pillar. The magic see-through projector has been developed? Su-yi asked in a surprised voice while looking down at the blueprint. Looking over it, Su-yi couldn't help standing up in shock. Looking at the shocked expression on Su-yi's face, Akali smiled proudly. Are you shocked? Su-yi stared at the blueprint on the table and couldn't suppress the shock in his heart. On this blueprint, the situation inside the pillar was clearly depicted. According to the blueprint, the inside of the pillar was actually made up of incomparably exquisite planks of unknown material. And on these planks, they were densely packed, but they were extremely neatly arranged, and there were no scattered lines at all. Seeing these patterns, a term that he had almost completely forgotten instantly came to his mind. Circuit board. Yes, the thing depicted on the blueprint was very similar to the circuit boards he was familiar with on Earth. As a senior mechanical engineer who had been interested in machinery and electrical appliances since he was a child, he was very familiar with this kind of thing. When he was on Earth, he had seen and touched countless of them when he was only 4 years old. But he never thought that he would see a circuit board here. No. He frowned and looked carefully for a long time, but then slowly shook his head. The pattern on it looked very much like a circuit board, but there were many details that were not the same. It couldn't really be confused with the circuit boards he was familiar with. But this still couldn't explain the doubts in Su Yi's heart. Why is it a circuit board? In the ruins left by the Abyss demons, it was fine to hide a sophisticated instrument. But this sophisticated instrument was actually composed of something similar to a circuit board, which was too surprising. And combined with the previous exploration of the ruins, Su-yi stimulated the pillar after simulating electricity. This made Su-yi feel a little strange. Could it be that these Abyss demons, in the process of civilization development, were actually somewhat similar to the humans on Earth? Mr. President, what's wrong with you? Akali saw Su-yi looking at the blueprint for a long time without speaking, and his expression was a little dull, so she couldn't help but ask worriedly. Su-yi came back to his senses, gently exhaled, and shook his head. Nothing, I just feel that the thing in this pillar is too surprising. Akali glanced at Su-yi suspiciously. The thing in this pillar was indeed strange, but who was the president? Why would he have such a big reaction because of this strange thing? However, Su-yi obviously didn't mean to explain, and Akali didn't have the mood to pursue these questions now. She patted the blueprint on the table and asked Su-yi, Mr. President, do you know how many ruins we have discovered during this period? How many? Akali stretched out her hands and gestured. A total of 37. So many, Su-yi exclaimed. Yes, and I'm sure that in fact, there are definitely more ruins nearby. And there are many that we haven't discovered. Why are you so sure? Su-yi was a little puzzled. Look at this map, and you'll understand. Akali took away the second blueprint and revealed the third one. Su-yi looked down and found that it was a map. This is a map of the nearby sea. Mr. President, you're really smart. Akali immediately made a gesture of appreciation to Su-yi. Then, her finger tapped on the map. Look, this is the space island. Then, her finger moved a little in the direction of the upper left corner, and there was obviously a mark here. This is where we first discovered the ruins. Su-yi estimated the scale and distance, then nodded. Then these marked places are the places where the ruins were discovered? Yes. Akali nodded in confirmation. So far, we've discovered 37, and all of them are marked on the map. Su-yi looked at the 37 slightly densely packed marks on the map, and didn't find anything special. This is your new discovery? Not only that, this time, Akali directly pulled out the fourth blueprint from below and placed it together with the third blueprint. Can you see it now? Su-yi looked at the fourth blueprint. There was a very complicated pattern on it, and it looked like the blueprint of a magic array. Looking at the third blueprint, Su-yi pondered for a moment, then stretched out his finger and skimmed over the marks on the third blueprint, drawing a few lines to connect a few of the marks, then compared it with the fourth blueprint and suddenly understood. These ruins can be connected into a magic array? Chapter 1204. Sir Guild Leader is so amazing. Akali praised and smiled as she pointed at the fourth blueprint that looked like a magic array. Then Sir Guild Leader, did you see anything from this magic array? Su-yi stared at the fourth blueprint for a long time before slowly shaking his head. No, this blueprint is not complete. Oh, Akali looked interested. Su-yi glanced at her and snorted. You are also a great magician. Can't you see that this magic array is definitely incomplete? Look, here, and here, it is obvious that there is no continuity in the middle. It is obvious that something is missing. Akali smiled. Sure enough, I can't fool Sir Guild Leader. That's right. Elder Undine and I have studied this magic array for a long time, and confirmed that this magic array is actually incomplete, inferring it's probably because we haven't found all the ruins, so this array diagram isn't complete. Sui frowned and pointed at the blueprint. Since you have found the magic array, it should be easy to infer the location of the ruins corresponding to the missing part. Why haven't you found it? Akali helplessly shook her head. We have indeed inferred that there should be 7 ruins that have not been found according to the magic array. But when we found the area, we found that there was only sea water in that area. Not even a small island, let alone any ruins. Is that so? Sui thought for a moment and then felt relieved. When the Abyss Demon Clan left this world, it was already more than 10,000 years ago. As the saying goes, the sea turns into mulberry fields. More than 10,000 years was enough for the topography of this world to change greatly. It was not strange for the sea area where the ruins were changed. Elder Undine also said so. Akali agreed with Suyi's inference. But this way, it will be very difficult for us to find the remaining ruins. There's also a more important problem. What? 10,000 years made the islands that originally contained the ruins disappear, so it is not strange for the location of the other ruins to change. How can we be sure that this diagram is correct? Sui looked down at the 4th blueprint and sighed softly. Akali was right. It was not unusual for the island carrying the ruins to have moved in the past 10,000 years. Therefore, the formation map drawn according to the location of the ruins did not have much practical significance. No, there's still some. Akali shook her head. At the very least, we know that the abyssal demons are also using magic. In addition, Elder Undine said that according to the legends passed down by the elves, the magic of the elves was not developed by the elves themselves. Instead, they learned it from somewhere else. I didn't know this before, but it looks like he learned it from the abyssal demons. Sui was a little surprised. According to the history of the signs, the magic that humans and other races mastered was actually stolen from the elves and gradually developed into magic with its own characteristics. However, no one had ever suspected where the elves' magic came from. If what Akali and Elder Undine said was true, it meant that the elves' magic was learned from the abyssal demons, which almost overturned the entire history of the signs. Sui thought even further than this. What exactly was magic? From Suyi's point of view, it was just a way to use energy. If the elves mastered magic from the abyssal demons, then this magic was not originally called magic, but an advanced technique of using energy that the abyssal demons mastered. The elves' ancestors learned some superficial knowledge from the abyssal demons, but did not understand the principles behind it. In the end, it evolved into the mysterious and magical magic of the signs. The scientific concept of magic that Sui proposed was the truth behind magic, tracing back to its origin. Thinking of this, Sui suddenly felt his heart brighten. The question that Sui had in his heart seemed to have been answered. Why did the people of the signs have such a magical skill when their level of civilization was so low? Why did Sui discover more and more principles and characteristics that were far beyond the technology of Earth through the scientific research of magic over the years? Why did the people of the signs have such a magical tool, but their development was slow until Suyi's arrival led them to a breakthrough? Previously, Sui felt that these questions went against the common sense of social development. But now he finally knew that these magic were stolen from the abyssal demons by the elves' ancestors. Everything made sense now. President, what are you thinking about again? Akali looked at Suyi's changing expression and waved her hand worriedly in front of him. Sui took a deep breath and worked hard to calm the fluctuations in his heart. If this was the truth of this world, then it was really surprising. After calming himself down, he suddenly thought of another question. Akali, do you know why the abyssal demons are called this? Akali shook her head. I don't know this. You should ask Elder Undine. Right. Where is Elder Undine? She's waiting for us in front. After around 2 hours, the magic airship was a bit north of the space island, stopping on the sea that was around 400 kilometers away. We're here. Akali stretched herself out, ending her discussion with Sui about the ruins and the magic array before standing up. Sui looked down through the window and revealed a trace of doubt. There's no island down there. You'll know in a while. Akali gave a laugh. She had the magic airship descend a bit, floating several meters above the sea before opening the door. Sir Chairman, let's go down. Elder Undine is waiting for us down there. Down there. Sue, he looked down at the blue sea with a strange expression. It can't be that you're telling me that she's in the water right now, right? That's right. Akali gave a laugh before jumping out the door. When she approached the surface of the water, she floated up and waved her hand before shouting, Sir Chairman, quickly come down. What is this? Sue, he helplessly shook his head. He turned to give an order to his subordinates in the magic airship before jumping out. Akali already had the power of a great magician, and there was no need to mention Sue. The sea was a forbidden area for normal people, but for the two of them, it wasn't a hindrance at all. When they were close to the surface of the sea, the two of them casually released some mana to directly separate the seawater. Then, they covered their bodies with a magic shield, which was equivalent to bringing a huge air shield with them as they sank into the sea. Akali led the way without stopping, and Sue followed behind. After a while, they were several hundred meters below the surface of the sea. It was already dark at this depth, so the two of them used magic to create a bit of light. After diving for another 100 meters, there was a bit of light that came from below. Akali pointed in the direction of the light to Sue before diving down even faster. Sue also sped up and followed behind. When they were close, Sue found that the light seemed very weak, but could be clearly seen in the deep sea, so it was actually very bright. When they came close, they found that the light came from a cave. Sue wasn't surprised by this. There were all kinds of terrains at the bottom of the sea, so it wasn't strange for there to be caves at the bottom of the sea. But it was a bit strange that there was light coming from inside the cave. Akali waved her hand at Sue before entering the cave. Sue swam in with her and found that the light was coming from the depths of the cave. After diving deeper for a while, Sue suddenly felt his body relax, as if the pressure of the sea suddenly disappeared. Akali had landed on the ground below the cave at some point and waved at Sue. Sir Guild Leader, come down. There is no water here. Sue doubtfully landed. After stepping on the ground, he stomped hard and found that the ground under his feet was unusually thick, and there were also a few muffled sounds. No matter how he looked at it, it didn't seem like he was stepping on an ordinary seabed. Sir Guild Leader, you can release the protective shield. You can breathe in here. It's no different from outside, Akali said. Is that so? Sue glanced at Akali before probing with his mana. Sure enough, he found that the surrounding space was almost exactly the same as the normal space above the sea. After removing the mana protective shield, there was indeed no seawater around. When he sniffed hard, he could even inhale very fresh air. Sue looked at the seawater behind him that seemed to be blocked by an invisible barrier, his face full of surprise. This place, is there a natural mana protective shield? Sue actually wanted to say that it was an oxygen mask, but he reacted at the last moment. It might not be natural. Akali revealed a mysterious smile. Sue pondered for a moment before extending his hand to feel the boundary of the invisible barrier that isolated the seawater. He found that this barrier was surging with a strange energy reaction. Although it was somewhat similar to a mana protective shield, there was still a big difference. But in any case, it didn't seem to be something that was naturally formed. Okay, let's go in first. Akali pulled Sue again and continued to go deeper into the cave. After turning a corner, the scene before them suddenly opened up. Sue looked forward and saw two slender figures standing in front of a wall in the distance. Chapter 12:05. Chairman Sue. Chairman Sue. In addition to Elder Undine, the other figure was Cassandra in human form. Sue glanced at Cassandra and did not ask why she was here. With a good relationship between Akali and Cassandra, it was not surprising that she told Cassandra the news here. Besides, it was related to the Abyss demons. If the dragons, who had a history even longer than the elves, were involved, they might be of more help. Have you been waiting here for a long time? Sue asked casually, turning his head to look at the wall in front of the two of them. With just a glance, he knew that this wall should be made of the same material as the pillars of the ruins that he had previously discovered. However, the pillars of the ruins looked similar to ordinary stone pillars without being stimulated, and the wall in front of him was exuding a gentle and bright light. The light in the passage should have come from here. We've been here for a while, but we still haven't found a way to go in, Elder Undine replied. Actually, we found this place last month, but we couldn't get in, Akali explained. Is that so? He looked up and found that he was actually in a very open space at this time. At least tens of meters above his head, he could vaguely see a layer of rock wall. The wall in front of him extended all the way to the top, forming an arc shape, but it separated a large space from the rock layer at the top. It seemed that the magic power shield covering the outside of this wall could not only isolate seawater, but also all other impurities. The seabed outside had been completely covered with a thick layer of rock over the past tens of thousands of years, but the surroundings of this wall still remained the same. If this is the ruins of the Abyss Demons, then the technology of the Abyss Demons is really amazing. He sighed and asked Akali, "Didn't you use the magic power X-ray projector to see the situation inside?" Akali shook her head. "I tried, but the magic signal waves can't penetrate this wall at all, so I can't see the situation inside." Sui felt a little strange. "Didn't you use the magic perspective projector to see the situation inside the ruined stone pillars? Why can't you see through this wall?" "How would I know?" Akali snappily said. Sui pondered for a moment before asking Elder Undine and Cassandra, "Do you elves and dragons have any records about these things?" "No." Elder Undine simply shook her head. "This is the first time I've heard of the so-called ruins." Cassandra knew even less than Elder Undine. Sui knew that he couldn't count on these two ancient race representatives to help him. He could only walk in front of the wall and take a closer look. The wall in front of him wasn't the entire wall. Whether it was to the left, right, or up, there was actually a space separated from the rock layer. Sui walked around the outside of the wall and flew up to observe from above. He found that this couldn't be considered a wall at all, but rather a semicircular dome building. This building was about 20 meters high, and the largest diameter at the bottom was even more than 200 meters. If it was hollow inside, then the space inside would be astonishingly large. After he flew around and didn't find anything strange. He could only give up helplessly. Of course, Akali and the others had discovered this place last month. If there was anything strange, they would have discovered it long ago. "Sir President, have you thought of how to get in?" Akali looked at Sui expectantly. Sui sighed and shook his head. "There's no other way. I can't even find a crack. This thing is just like an eggshell. But I think this place must be related to the stone pillars we found before. As long as we can study those stone pillars thoroughly, we might be able to find a way to open this place." Akali was a little disappointed, but she also knew that Sui was right. "Don't tell me that we can only look at this new discovery. What's wrong with that? It's here. It can't run away." Sui stretched out his hand and patted the wall. He felt the thick texture of the wall and turned to Akali with a smile. "Anyway, we still have time. We can study it slowly. There's no need to." Sui suddenly found that Akali, Elder Undine, and Cassandra in front of him all had an expression on their faces as if they had seen a ghost. "Sir President, you?" Akali's eyes widened as she pointed behind Sui with a look of shock. "What is it?" Sui turned around in a confused manner and was instantly stunned. On the originally seamless wall behind him, there was now a rectangular gap that was nearly 3 meters tall and more than 4 meters wide. "No way." Sui looked inside the gap in surprise, but he could only see a neat passage leading inside. He couldn't see anything specific. "Chairman Sui, are you actually an abyssal demon?" Cassandra asked in shock. "Nonsense." Sui immediately shook his head. "The abyssal demon disappeared more than 10,000 years ago. How could I be one?" Cassandra was, of course, just joking. Akali and Elder Undine didn't think much of it. Elder Undine pointed to the exposed passage. "What do we do now? Go in?" Everyone was a little hesitant. This place was strange everywhere. If there was any danger inside, they might not be able to deal with it. Akali thought for a while, gritted her teeth, and strode inside. Since we're already here, how can we be afraid? Sui smiled and followed behind Akali. At the same time, he condensed all the mana in his body and raised his vigilance. Elder Undine and Cassandra looked at each other and followed behind. It turned out that they had filtered it. The passage wasn't long. After walking for about 10 meters, their eyes lit up. An incomparably huge and open space appeared in front of them. Sui looked up and confirmed that the space inside was similar to what he had estimated outside. It was indeed a semicircular dome. In terms of volume, it was probably enough to cover a standard basketball court. However, in this huge space, there was nothing at all. The only thing that attracted everyone's attention was a huge pillar standing in the middle of the space. Akali flew over without hesitation and looked around the pillar for a long time. She even flew up to observe the top of the pillar. When she finally landed, she said with a strange expression, "This pillar. I'm afraid it's the same as the pillars outside. But why is it only wrapped tightly?" "It's not the same." Cassandra looked up at the huge pillar that was at least 20 meters tall and 2 to 3 meters thick. She denied Akali's statement. "At least this pillar is much bigger than the ones outside. If I'm not wrong, this pillar should be the core part, so it's more well protected." Elder Undine guessed. "Yes, I agree with this speculation." So he also said. Akali thought for a while before raising her hand and taking out a delicate instrument from her magic space. This instrument was the magic X-ray projector that she, Elder Undine, and the New Moon Chamber of Commerce had jointly developed. Akali aimed the magic X-ray projector at the huge pillar, and a magic illusion was displayed through the instrument. Akali, Elder Undine, and Cassandra looked at the illusion and spoke at the same time. "It really is the same. Is it the same as the pillars outside?" Sui asked. "No, it's not exactly the same." Akali shook her head and carefully observed the illusion for a while before nodding with certainty. "Yes, there are many details that are different." The four of them observed the illusion for a while before exchanging looks at the same time. "Lady President, I'm certain these pillars should be left behind by the Abyss demons. It was a huge magic array that they used to go to another world. And the largest pillar in front of us is the core of this magic array. That is to say, as long as we can activate these pillars, we can activate this magic array and go to another world like the Abyss demons?" Cassandra asked in surprise. "This?" Akali and Sui looked at each other before shaking their heads with bitter smiles. "I'm afraid it won't be that easy. First, the Abyss demons going to another world is only a legend. No one knows if they succeeded or not. If they failed, then activating this magic array would be courting death. Secondly, even if they succeeded, how do we activate this magic array?" Of course, Cassandra opened her mouth, but couldn't continue. Although they had explored so many ruins of the Abyss demons and speculated about some secrets, they still didn't know much about these pillars. How would they know how to activate this magic array? "It's actually very simple." Sui smiled. "Since the magic illusion projector can already detect the situation inside these pillars, then we can imitate them. Then we can conduct all kinds of experiments and research, and one day, we will be able to find out the secrets hidden in these pillars." Akali glanced at the illusion again and was speechless. "Lady President, although I can't see it clearly, these instruments are very high-end. How can we imitate them? How do you know if you don't try?" Sui smiled. "Anyway, in your eyes, Lady President, no problem is a problem." Akali rolled her eyes. "But I still have a very important question. Lady President, in the past month or so, we have tried various methods, but we still couldn't get in. Why did the door open automatically when you came? Could it be that you have been here long ago?" Elder Undine and Cassandra also cast doubtful gazes at Sui. This question was indeed a bit inconceivable. Chapter 1206. Akali's question could not be answered. Of course, Sui was not an abyssal demon. It was also his first time here. As for why he could make this place open automatically, Su-E himself did not know. How could he answer this question? After asking a few questions, Akali knew that Su-E really did not understand. She could only give up. However, it was not easy to find this place that was inferred to be the core of the formation. Akali obviously would not give up easily. After the group went in and out several times, they found that only Su-E could open this place. Once people left, it would automatically close. Akali immediately wanted Su-E to stay and help her with the research. However, this request was rejected by Su-E. He did not have so much time to stay here to do these research. Whether it was in Signs or the Demon Cloud continent, there were a lot of things waiting for him to deal with. The final result of the discussion was to let Akali lead a team to cooperate with Elder Undine to study the exposed ruins. Su-E would rush over when necessary to help them open the core door. According to Su-Yi's estimation, with the normal research progress, Akali and Elder Undine would not be able to make any decent progress at all in a few years. And if he wanted to really crack the secrets of these ruins left by the abyssal demons, he might not be able to do it in his lifetime. Of course, he wanted to imitate the abyssal demons and directly travel to another world through super powerful technical means. However, he would not bite off more than he could chew. It would be great if he could research it. If he couldn't, he had nothing to lose. In contrast, the current problem was the most important thing to him. After being dragged by Akali to study with her for more than half a month, Su-E finally set off again and returned to Signs after nearly a year. Hashtag, 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 a breeze blew by, and the air was already a little hot. This meant that the season had already entered late spring and was beginning to make strides toward summer. At this time, it was as if it had already entered midsummer. His whole body was sweating profusely. Even if he wiped himself with a towel, he would soon be covered with sweat again. Boom! A ball of flame suddenly soared into the sky, almost enveloping Jelligin's entire body. Fortunately, Jelligen had experimented with this high-temperature fire spell formation more than 200 times, and he was already familiar with it. When he sensed the strange magical fluctuations in the spell formation, he was already prepared to dodge. He managed to avoid the explosion of flames without any mishap. Even so, the few strands of hair on his forehead curled up from the heat. If it wasn't for the fact that it had been soaked in water earlier, the hair would have been burned away by the flames. Damn it! Seeing that the experiment had failed again, Jelligen couldn't help but curse fiercely. He wiped off his sweat, picked up a large cup of salt water with a little sugar added to it, and poured it down his throat. If he didn't replenish the salt and sugar in time, he would have fainted due to dehydration. How could he maintain the energy to do this experiment? Looking at the new high-power magic air conditioner on the wall that he had bought last month, Jelligen hesitated a bit before giving a sigh. He took the remote control and turned on the magic air conditioner. After a while, a cool breeze came out of the magic air conditioner, making Jelligen feel very comfortable. Achoo! The cold and hot hit made him give a strong sneeze. Jelligen was very clear that the safest thing for him to do right now was to take a hot bath first, so he wouldn't get sick. But he still needed to do experiments, so even if he took a bath, he would be covered in sweat again, and it would be a wasted bath. It was a good thing that he paid attention to training, so his body was much stronger than normal magicians, so he wasn't worried about this problem. After carefully wiping his sweat with a towel, he put another towel over himself. He then picked up the magic communicator that he had thrown to the side and dialed a number. Hey, Jelligen, you're calling me now. Did the experiment succeed? There was an excited voice that came from the magic communicator. Succeed my ass. Jelligen scolded fiercely. Jelligen cursed. Damn Dio, your theory is wrong. I've done over 200 experiments, but I haven't succeeded once. Impossible. The voice from the magic communicator immediately became much louder. My theory has been carefully calculated by me and has been proven countless times. How could it be wrong? It must be that your method is wrong. You're saying that my method is wrong? Then you can find someone else. Jelligen said with a cold snort. Dio on the other side immediately softened and said with a laugh, No, I was just joking. You are the Empire's most famous high-temperature magic array expert. How could you make a mistake? I feel that. There must be some small flaws. Actually, you're already very close to succeeding, right? Jelligan gave another snort. Although his experiments had failed again and again, the effects of his experiments were getting better and better. Moreover, through these 200 experiments, Jelligan was sure that Dio's cross-induction temperature control theory was extraordinary. It allowed him to easily raise the temperature of the flames produced by a high-temperature fire magic array by more than 10%. If it was in the past magic system, it would be enough to raise the might of a fireball spell by 10% or more, which was naturally extraordinary. Hearing that Jelligan didn't refute, Dio became excited again and asked, "Hey, Jelligan, how long do you think? How long do you think you will need to succeed?" "What? You can't wait?" Jelligan asked coldly. "It's not that I can't wait, but the military. Cough, the employer over there can't wait. If you can't give me a result before the end of the month, they will give me less than a third of the money." Jelligan frowned slightly. Although Dio only spoke half of it, Jelligan had already guessed that the employer Dio was talking about was the Empire's military. But why did the Empire's military want this high-temperature magic array so much? Although it was said that the Empire's military had been secretly researching and developing military magic machines all these years, what did the thing he was researching have to do with military magic machines? "Even if they don't give me anything, I still can't make it if I can't make it," Jelligan replied loudly. "Tell them that if they want to get qualified research results, they must be patient. How can it be so easy for me to do it alone? I'm not a new flyer." Dio was silent for a while, then suddenly lowered his voice and asked, Jelligan, are you interested in?" "Not interested." Jelligan interrupted Dio without any trace of politeness. He had long heard that the Empire's military was recruiting mages from all over the Empire to assist in the research and development of military magic machines. Now that Dio had mentioned it so mysteriously, combined with what he had said before, Jelligan was afraid that it was related to this. Jelligan didn't have any interest in working for the military. First of all, the New Flyer, the Continental Sorcerers Guild, and the Continental Union of Mage Teachers and Magic Teachers were all under strict surveillance when applying for jobs in various countries. If they were discovered, they might be expelled from the two major guilds. The risk was too great. Even if there weren't such risks, Jelligan still wouldn't have any interest in working for the Empire's military. Compared to the restrictions he would face after joining the military, it was obviously much more comfortable to freely conduct research on his own. Moreover, once he joined the military, he would definitely conduct research related to military magic machines. He wouldn't be able to research whatever he wanted like now. It was both relaxing and enjoyable, and he could also occasionally take some private research work from some magic machine merchant associations and receive a considerable amount of remuneration. No matter how he looked at it, it was much better than joining the military. After hearing Jelligan's unyielding tone, Dio tactfully stopped mentioning it and changed the topic to another matter. "Right, Jelligan, I'm afraid that there might be a problem with the investment in the Tiffy's mine that we talked about before." Jelligan frowned. "What problem?" "The so-called Tiffy's mine wasn't actually located in the Kamla Empire, but in the Mana Magic Kingdom. As for the investment in the Tiffy's mine that Dio mentioned, it was because the Kamla Empire had occupied the land near the mine and put it up for auction, which had attracted a lot of attention. Previously, Dio had told Jelligan that he knew an insider with connections who could buy some shares in the mine and invited Jelligan to join as well. However, the situation hadn't stabilized at that time, so the bidding wasn't confirmed. He didn't expect that there would be such a change in less than a month. "I received news that the president of the New Flyer is coming back soon." Jelligan was stunned. "What does his return have to do with us investing in the mine? You still don't understand?" Dio let out a bitter laugh. "Why does the Empire dare to wage war against the Mana Magic Kingdom? Isn't it because Sue-E left signs and the leader of the New Flyer isn't here? Now that he's back, the Empire is worried about whether or not to continue attacking the Mana Magic Kingdom. If Sue-E came back and intervened in this, they might not be able to continue fighting this war. And according to Sue-E's habits, the Empire might have to return the land they occupied to the Mana Magic Kingdom. As for the Tiffy's mine, Jelligan understood. If the Kanla Empire was pressured by the new flyer to return the land they occupied, then the Tiffy's mine would definitely be returned as well. This way, the investment that he and Dio had planned would naturally go up in smoke. That damn Sue, why did he come back now? If he came back a little later, the armistice between the Empire and the Mana Magic Kingdom might have been signed already. Then, even if he wanted to intervene, the Empire could just ignore him. That might not be the case. What if he forced the Empire to return the land? What do you think the Empire would do? Jelligan was silent. From the examples of the past few years, if Sue represented the new flyer to put pressure on the Kanla Empire, then the Kanla Empire would have no choice but to agree. After thinking for a while, Jelligan's expression became very strange. Hey Dio, do you think those big shots of the Empire can really endure? Chapter 12:07. The Kandra Emperor looked at the document on the table in front of him and didn't say a thing. This document was only a piece of information, but it was placed at the top of all the documents. This meant that of all the things he needed to take care of today, this was the most important one. This thick piece of information was over 10,000 words, but in summary, it only described one thing. So he was back. This fellow. Why didn't he just stay on the Demon Cloud continent and not come back? Or perhaps, wouldn't it be better if he just died on the Demon Cloud continent? The Kandra Emperor revealed a bitter smile. Actually, to him, his thoughts towards Sue as the New Flyers chairman had always been very complicated. If it was purely from the perspective of the Kanla Empire, he should be very grateful to Sue and the New Flyer he represented. First, the New Flyer brought the agricultural magic machines and cooperated with the elves. They obtained the plant growth ability that the elves weren't willing to share with other races, creating fertilizer. With the help of these two things, the current grain yield of the Kanla Empire had greatly increased. Compared to 30 years ago, when the New Flyer hadn't appeared, it had increased by close to 10 times. With this wild increase in grain yield, the Kanla Empire didn't need to worry about famine anymore. The Empire's rule naturally became much more stable, and they didn't need to worry about the appearance of disaster victims at all. Even if there was a large-scale famine, with the grain reserves of the Kanla Empire each year, it wouldn't cause any problems at all. If it was in the past, this would be unimaginable. Of course, there were many things that were unimaginable in the past. To the Kandra Emperor, the second thing after increasing grain yield was improving transportation. The Kanla Empire was a very large empire. From a northernmost point to the southernmost point of the empire, it was over 4,000 kilometers in a straight line. Even if one used the fastest horse and ran without rest, it would take at least 3 days to run from the northernmost point to the southernmost point. But in reality, because of the problem of manpower and horses, as well as the obstruction of the roads, it would take at least half a month to complete this journey. This made it so that no matter what happened in the empire, it would take several days for it to reach the ears of the emperor. This greatly affected the control and influence of the empire's central government on the empire. In the current Kanla Empire, there were countless roads that crisscrossed, forming a road network that connected all the cities and towns of the empire. Adding in the magic car that the New Flyer brought, it would only take a day or two to reach any place in the empire. Even setting aside the various civilian benefits, the fact that it could allow the central command of the Empire's army to arrive at any location in the Empire within a day or two greatly increased the Emperor's control over the Empire. Think about it. As long as you, of the Empire's army, of the Empires of you in a day or two. With this kind of deterrence, which noble would choose to rebel without knowing death? Then again, the various magic machine industries in the Kanla Empire were developing, and because the New Flyer was cooperating with the Empire, the other magic machine companies were also working with the Empire. This allowed the Empire to have the greatest control over the magic machine industry in the Empire. This meant that if the nobles of the Empire wanted to participate in the magic machine industry, they had to work closely with the Empire. That way, they would have better opportunities for development. Participating in the magic machine industry would give them large benefits that far surpassed what they could get from their territory. So how could the nobles of the empire not wisely rebel? Other than these 2 points, among the changes that the new flyer brought to the Kanla Empire, the one that the Kandra Emperor liked the most was the magic communication network. With the magical communication network that covered the entire empire, he was able to know everything that happened in every part of the empire right away. He could also know everything that happened with the help of the magical illusion images. This was much better than sitting in the royal palace before, waiting for the reports from below after being delayed for several days. It also gave him the joy of being the ruler of this large empire. Or to put it more directly, for the previous Kandra Emperor, he knew that he was the incomparably honorable emperor of the Kanla Empire, but because of his status, it was hard for him to come into contact with all aspects of this large empire. Even if he sat on the throne of the emperor, he didn't feel that real. But now, the new flyer had a large transportation network, fast and convenient transportation, as well as an even more convenient magic communication network. It made him feel like he was ruling the empire, and he truly felt like he was the emperor. From this angle, of course, he had to thank the new flyer and Su-Yi for bringing all of this to him. But looking at it from another angle, the Kandra Emperor hated Su-Yi to the core. That's right, Su-Yi and the new flyer he represented had caused a heaven-shaking change in the Kanla Empire, making him the greatest emperor in the history of the empire by countless people. But the Kandra Emperor felt that his power was far from before. The reason was very simple. It was because there was a new flyer pressing down on him. Yes, the Kanla Empire and the Malar Empire were the 2 strongest empires on the signs. The Kanla Empire was even stronger than the Malar Empire, so it wasn't excessive to call them the strongest countries on the continent. But because of the existence of a new flyer, whether it was the Kanla Empire or the Malar Empire, they had to consider the thoughts of the new flyer no matter what they did. If there was something that the 2 empires wanted to do and the new flyer didn't agree to, the 2 empires had no choice but to listen to the new flyer's opinion and give up. There were even many times when the new flyer didn't need to make a clear stance, and the 2 empires had to consider the possible attitudes of a new flyer when they did something. This feeling was very bad. Even if he was the incomparably respected emperor of the Kanla Empire, the Kandra Emperor had to consider many factors and make compromises on some things. But this was just a choice that he made after considering the benefits of all sides. But now that he was facing the new flyer, he only had scruples. It could even be said that he was afraid. Even if the Kandra Emperor never admitted it, he was very clear in his heart. 11 years ago, when the new flyer worked with the Kingdom of Ruhr against the Kanla Empire, it had left an indelible mark in his heart. The strength of the new flyer's military magic machines made the 2 empires unable to resist at all, especially when the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's terrifying attack that collapsed a mountain peak. It had shattered everyone's fighting spirit. It made countless people in the empire unable to think of becoming enemies with the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's guards when they mentioned them. So the Kandra Emperor had to endure, he had to worry, he had to respect, and it could even be said that he had to listen to Su-Yi's opinion. This was simply a humiliation for him, the powerful emperor of the empire. Now, it had been 11 years since that battle that had destroyed everyone's fighting spirit. In these 11 years, the Kanla Empire and the new flyer had worked together, wildly developing their magic machine industry. With the help of the new flyer and their own hard work, they had built a complete magic machine industry. In secret, the Kanla Empire had wildly invested in military magic machines and had already produced extraordinary results. According to the secret tests of the Empire's army headquarters, the military magic machines of the Kanla Empire weren't weaker than the military magic machines that the new flyer had shown 11 years ago. But no one thought that the new flyer would stagnate in these 11 years. So the Kandra Emperor had been very careful and had been waiting for the right time. Just last year, the time had finally come. The Continental Peace Treaty had been signed for 10 years, but when it was about to end, Su-Yi, who had signed the Continental Peace Treaty, had left the signs. Without Su-Yi, the new flyer had lost their leader. After the Kandra Emperor considered it carefully, he finally decided to make a move. Attacking the Mana Magic Kingdom was actually a test for him, as well as a gamble. He wanted to test the new flyer's true attitude towards the Mana Magic Kingdom, and he also wanted to gamble on what kind of reaction the new flyer would have to the Kamla Empire's sudden attack. Facts proved that his gamble had paid off. Since the Kamla Empire had declared war on the Mana Magic Kingdom last year, it had been close to a year now. But in this year, the new flyer had only asked the large companies to help the citizens involved in the war, but they hadn't shown any attitude towards the war itself. This reaction fell into the eyes of the Kandra Emperor and many people in the Empire, which without a doubt represented a very clear signal. The new flyer might not be able to control the situation in the signs anymore. Or taking it a step further, perhaps the new flyer was also afraid? In fact, the Xinfei Chamber of Commerce's strength was no longer enough to suppress all the countries on the continent, not even being able to suppress the two empires. That was why they weren't interfering in the war against the Kamla Empire like before. If it really was like this, didn't that mean that the Kamla Empire had hope of becoming the strongest empire that ruled the signs again? However, the Kandra Emperor couldn't be certain. He still had to wait for the new flyer's true attitude. Su-Yi wasn't here, so the new flyer's actions couldn't represent the attitude of the new flyer. Now that Su-Yi was back, what kind of reaction would he have? Chapter 12:08. The eyes of all the signs were focused on Su-Yi, who had been away from signs for a year. Countless people were guessing if there would be any changes in New Flyer, and there were countless people who were looking forward to Su-Yi's return and seeing the new flyer medal in the war between the Kamla Empire and the Mana Magic Kingdom. There were many people who had their eyes wide open, planning to see the new flyer take out those shocking military magic machines that had shocked the continent again. However, Su-Yi had disappointed everyone. After a year, Su-Yi, who had returned to signs from the Demon Cloud continent, didn't hide his tracks. He sat in the magic airship and casually landed on the tarmac of the New Flight Commerce main base. He casually appeared in front of everyone and announced that he was back. Countless people were waiting for him to make a shocking decision, but Su-Yi didn't make any special moves. It was the same as when he hadn't left signs a year ago, participating in the matters of the new flyer as usual. It was like nothing had changed because he had been away for a year. All right, it wasn't right to say that nothing had changed. Su-Yi, who had come back, didn't seem to be interested in participating in the matters of the new flyer. There were countless activities that should have been done by him, but he had pushed them all away. He had the current CEO of the new flyer, Grius, do them all. Even in the normal internal work meetings of the new flyer, he rarely appeared. If it wasn't for the fact that people often saw him in the New Flight Commerce main base, they would have thought that he had left after coming back. As for the changes in the new flyer, just like in the past, the new flyer followed their plans and developed their affairs in an orderly manner. There didn't seem to be any special changes. Of course, the new flyer had already become one of the largest companies in signs. Not only did they have business in all kinds of industries, they also had close cooperation with various countries, companies, and organizations. So even if there weren't any special changes in the new flyer, the matters that they were involved in touched all aspects of signs. Every move of this giant was related to the lives of most people in signs, even their fates. Countless people were worried that after Su-Yi came back, there would be different changes in the new flyer. But the new flyer was stable and didn't seem to change its steps. The only difference was that 2 months after Su-Yi came back, the new flyer began recruiting people to work on the Demon Cloud continent. According to the official statement from the new flyer needed people who were willing to go to the Demon Cloud continent and work on a new continent, to develop all kinds of talents. For this reason, the new flyer was willing to offer high salaries and good benefits to attract these talents to join. However, for the people in signs, even though it wasn't a big deal for them to go hundreds or even thousands of kilometers away from their hometown because of the new transportation methods, they were still full of doubts about going to another continent tens of thousands of kilometers away. So even though the conditions offered by the new flyer were attractive enough, there weren't many people who were willing to go. Or to be more precise, there weren't many talents who were willing to go. It had to be known on the current Signs continent, as long as one had decent talents in the magic machine industry, they would be sought after by the large companies, large organizations, and countries. They could easily obtain good jobs and pay, so why would they need to go to another continent that was over 10,000 kilometers away for an adventure? And even ordinary people who didn't have any special skills could still find good jobs in the thriving magic machine industry in Signs. Naturally, they didn't need to take risks. Therefore, even though the announcement from the new flyer had been posted for 2 or 3 months, it didn't receive any enthusiastic response. The total number of people who were successfully recruited was less than 1,000. It was countless times worse than the minimum recruitment goal of 20,000 people. However, 3 months later, the new flyer suddenly announced to the public that they had added a total of 3,000 qualified people. This made great progress in the recruitment work in an instant. Moreover, the new flyer also announced to the public that a large number of people would be willing to respond to the call of the new flyer and go to the Demon Cloud continent to develop. This sudden change naturally caused everyone to be astonished. Several newspapers even openly questioned whether the new flyer had deliberately released fake news to lure people to follow the trend, because they hadn't been able to recruit people for a long time. However, more newspapers asked another question. Where do the people that the new flyer suddenly recruited come from? ####. Sue E. Are you doing this on purpose? 70 waved the Banta Times in her hand and asked Sue E in the magic illusion with a serious look. Oh, what on purpose? Sue E tilted his head and revealed a confused look. 70 gave a sigh. If they met in real life, she would have immediately slapped the Banta Times in front of Sue E and loudly questioned him. The Banta Times had such a large headline, it was impossible for Sue E to not see it. But he still acted like this, clearly not wanting to give 70 the real answer. However, 70 had to ask because this was related to the future decisions of the Lampari Kingdom. It was just too important. The Banta Times said that the new flyer announced their withdrawal from the Mana Magic Kingdom last year, and you deliberately chose to leave the Signs last year to give Kandra space, letting them fight the Mana Magic Kingdom. Is that right? He was silent for a bit before shaking his head. The Banta Times is thinking too much. Why would I do this? Are there any benefits for me in our new flyer? I just can't see what benefits there are. I don't understand. 70 angrily shouted in her heart, but her face remained calm as she kept asking. Benefits? For example, your new flyer is taking away large amounts of magic machine-related talents and workers from the Mana Magic Kingdom, sending them to the Demon Cloud continent to help with development. Isn't this considered a benefit? He stroked his chin and nodded with a faint smile. This is indeed a benefit, but it's just an accident. After all, I can't order the Kamla Empire to fight the Mana Magic Kingdom. Then again, I've always hoped that the Signs would be in a peaceful state. Don't you know this? 70 stared at Sue E in the magic illusion, trying to see what he was really thinking from the faint smile on his face. Do you really hope this? Sue E slowly stopped smiling, and his expression became serious. After looking at 70 for a while, he asked in a deep voice, 70, you shouldn't be asking me this question. You should be asking the leaders of all the countries on the continent. And one of them is yourself. 70's heart skipped a beat and a trace of panic appeared in her eyes, but she calmed down and shook her head with a forced smile. I don't understand what you mean. Is that so? Sue Yi's lips curled into a smile of deep meaning, but he didn't keep asking. After pausing, he continued, if you're contacting me because of the guesses in the Banta Times, I can only tell you that I'm not interested in considering that much, and I'm not interested in this kind of conspiracy theory. But I admit that the Kamla Empire declaring war on the Mana Magic Kingdom was within my expectations. 70's eyes opened wide. Why? Since you knew this would happen, why didn't you take precautions ahead of time? Why should I take precautions? So he asked back, is the Signs a continent that belongs to me alone? Can everyone on this continent listen to what I say? Not to mention others. Would you ignore the Lampari Kingdom and listen to me? Your Majesty, 70? Hearing the coldness in Sue Yi's voice, 70 fell silent again. The forced smile on her face became even more bitter. Sue-yi had already returned to Signs for 5 months. During this time, she had sent several invitations to Sue-yi, hoping that Sue-yi would come to Ambalmar City to discuss some important matters with her, but she had been rejected by Sue-yi without exception. Although Sue-yi had given the reason that he wanted to spend more time with his family, Seveni could clearly feel Sue-yi's estrangement. She had known Sue-yi for 30 years and had always been close friends. With the support of Sue-yi and the new flyer, she had pacified the internal strife of the Lampari kingdom and sat on the throne. Properly speaking, Sue-yi could be considered her benefactor and even had a close relationship with her. But now, there was a crack between the two of them. Seveni was clear on why this crack appeared. It was because of the military magic machines that the Lampari kingdom was secretly researching. Sui had always been against the countries of Signs investing money and manpower into military magic machines because he felt that this was a waste of manpower and resources. So, he even made most of the countries of the continent sign the Continent Peace Treaty and the Continent Magicians Peace Treaty. With an even stronger attitude, he had kept Signs at peace for 11 years. But Seveni, as his closest friend, had always gone against his wishes and secretly researched military magic machines. So, of course, he would be angry. Seveni understood Sue-yi's anger, but she was helpless. She was the queen of the Lampari kingdom after all, so, of course, she had to consider the Lampari kingdom. Sue-yi didn't want the countries of Signs to research military magic machines. But if the Lampari kingdom didn't research them, could it be guaranteed that the other countries wouldn't research them? If the Lampari kingdom really did this, after several years, they would find that the other countries had been secretly researching for a long time. The Lampari kingdom would be too far behind in this aspect, and it would be incomparably dangerous for the Lampari kingdom. Of course, she could rely on the support of the new flyer to ensure the strength of the Lampari kingdom. But what if she wasn't here? What if Sue-yi wasn't here? Who could guarantee that the Lampari kingdom and the new flyer would maintain a good relationship? Relying on others wasn't reliable. The most reliable was always oneself. Chapter 1209. Seveni firmly believed in this. So even if she knew that Sue-yi would be angry after learning of this, she still chose to develop her own military magic machines. Even more than 10 years ago, when she took Teresa from Sue-yi's hands, she already had this idea. During these years, the Lampari kingdom had made quite a bit of progress in developing military magic machines. The Lampari kingdom before only had the support of New Flyer to suppress the other countries in terms of military strength, even surpassing the two empires. But the current Lampari kingdom, even if they didn't have the support of New Flyer, they could still rely on their military magic machines to obtain a very strong battle strength. Seveni knew that the two empires and many other countries on the continent were secretly developing military magic machines. She wasn't certain what level the military magic machines these countries developed were at, but she was very certain that the Lampari kingdom's military magic machines surpassed all the other countries. This was because the Lampari kingdom had developed many military magic machines that surpassed the military magic machines that New Flyer took out 10 years ago in terms of technology and power. Even if it couldn't compare to the current New Flyer compared to the other countries, it would definitely surpass them by quite a bit. After all, the Lampari kingdom was the first country in the Signs to have a magic machine industry, as well as the first country to use military magic machines. Adding in the fact that they had a close cooperation with New Flyer, obtaining large amounts of magic machine technology, the Lampari kingdom had a natural advantage in this aspect. However, because of this, there was a crack between Seveni and Sue-yi. The Lampari kingdom might not be able to obtain the full support of Sue-yi and New Flyer in the future, but Seveni didn't regret this. It was still the same words. The most reliable person was herself. As long as the Lampari kingdom became strong, they could stand firm on the Signs and compete with the two empires. After these thoughts passed through Seveni's mind, she took a deep breath and looked up at Sue-yi with a calm expression. So, Sue-yi, are you planning to ignore this matter? Even if the Kanla Empire really takes over the Mana Magic Kingdom, you won't care? If the Kanla Empire has that ability. So, he shrugged. Of course, the prerequisite is that the Kanla Empire doesn't harm the interests of the new flyer. I understand. 70 gave a slight nod before shaking her head and asking, then what if our Lampari Kingdom also makes a move? In a magical illusion, Su Yi's eyes suddenly became sharp. 70, are you prepared? 70 slightly knit her brows. I don't understand what you mean. What preparation should I make? Su Yi looked at her for a while before giving a sigh. He waved his hand and said, forget it. It isn't related to me anyway. This is your Lampari Kingdom's matter. It isn't related to me. 70 opened her mouth and hesitated. After pausing, she asked with a smile, speaking of this, contacting you this time is mainly to ask you. Your new flyer is recruiting large amounts of people to the Demon Cloud continent. Is it because you have made great progress on the Demon Cloud continent? Actually, since the new flyer discovered the Demon Cloud continent, they had been developing the Demon Cloud continent the entire time. The forces that participated in this development were naturally led by the new flyer. There were many other countries and companies that joined in the beginning. But because the Demon Cloud continent was too backward and it was mainly occupied by the gnomes, it was very hard to develop. So the forces outside the new flyer gradually decreased their investment and finally withdrew one by one. Even the closest ally of the new flyer, the Lampari Kingdom, chose to withdraw a few years ago. After all, compared to the Demon Cloud continent that was tens of thousands of kilometers away and hard to produce, the signs were much more important. It wasn't that no one knew how important developing a new continent was in the long run, but in the signs where the magic machine industry was quickly developing, once they fell behind, they would fall behind and never be able to make a comeback. So there wasn't a single country that didn't fully invest in this, so naturally they didn't have the manpower and resources to invest in the Demon Cloud continent. Now that Su Yi had been on the Demon Cloud continent for close to a year, and he was recruiting large amounts of people to go to the Demon Cloud continent. This naturally meant that the new flyer had made new progress on the Demon Cloud continent. There's some progress, but it's still far from full development, so I need a lot of people to participate. What? Are you interested? Su Yi asked back. 70 shook her head with a bitter smile. I'm interested, but I don't have extra people to help you. Right now the kingdom needs people all over, and I want to run to the Demon Cloud continent to grab a bunch of slaves. How can I have extra people to throw on the Demon Cloud continent? Speaking of this, the question I asked you at the beginning was if you were deliberately making the Kanla Empire and the Mana Magic Kingdom go to war and then taking in the Mana Magic Kingdom's people and sending them to the Demon Cloud continent. No, this is just an unexpected gain. After all, we didn't get that many people from the Mana Magic Kingdom, right? If it was for this goal, I would deliberately make the Kanla Empire go to war with the Mana Magic Kingdom. The benefits would be too low and the risks would be too big. As a merchant, this isn't a good choice. 70 nodded and agreed with Su Yi's explanation. Regarding this was the consensus of most people on the signs. No one thought that Su Yi's previous arrangements were for this goal. Like he said, doing this was a bit stupid. It wasn't like his usual style. But everyone kept guessing Su Yi's real goal, and 70 wasn't an exception. Su Yi definitely wouldn't do this for no reason. He definitely had a deeper goal, but no one could see it yet. Thinking of this, 70 looked at Su Yi's face in the magic illusion that was clearly 50 years old. But his face wasn't that different from the first time she saw him, and she gave a sigh in her heart. If it was before, she could directly ask Su Yi, but now it was impossible. Then how are you prepared to solve this problem? 70 asked with a bit of interest. There's no better way for now. We can only slowly start with the locals of the Demon Cloud continent. Do you know? There aren't that few humans on the Demon Cloud continent. Just based on the number of humans that our company has found, there are already over 50,000 of them. If we gather all the humans on the Demon Cloud continent, I estimate that there should be at least 1 or 2 million of them. Of course, the current abilities of these humans are far from enough, and they need large amounts of training before they can be used. So, through the long-distance magic communication, Su-yi explained the arrangements of New Flyer on the Demon Cloud continent to 70 in detail. 70 listened to Su-yi's explanation and fell into her memories. In the past 30 years, she and Su-yi had discussed various plans countless times. Each time, New Flyer would receive shocking development, and the Lampari Kingdom would receive benefits that couldn't be ignored. But this time, she could only listen from the side and couldn't enter the conversation. This was because the Lampari Kingdom wasn't part of Su-yi's plan at all. Even all the countries and signs weren't part of Su-yi's plan. Thinking of this, 70 was suddenly surprised. Su-yi and New Flyer were showing signs of developing the Demon Cloud continent, but they didn't have any thoughts of letting other countries or forces join them. Could it be Su-yi was planning on developing the Demon Cloud continent alone and treating it as his own territory? Thinking of this possibility, 70 suddenly felt a sense of danger. However, this sense of danger turned into a bitter smile. So what if Su-yi showed his attitude? Not to mention the Lampari Kingdom that she represented being powerless. Even the two empires couldn't do anything. Or perhaps the two empires and even herself hoped that Su-yi and New Flyer would do this. If most of New Flyer's power and Su-yi's attention were placed on the Demon Cloud continent, it would be a good thing for many of the countries and signs. Su-yi talked for close to an hour. Not only did it include New Flyer's development plan, it also included some local customs on the Demon Cloud continent. It could be considered chatting. To be honest, the communication between the two of them could be said to be the longest communication they'd had since the long-distance magical communication system was established. However, after ending the communication, 70 didn't have a happy expression at all. If it was before, although the communication between the two of them was very short, they would talk about all kinds of important matters. Even if they occasionally chatted, it was just some casual daily communication, so it wouldn't take this long. Now that the communication between the two of them had lasted for an hour, it seemed like the two of them were still close. But in reality, a bitter smile appeared on 70's lips. She shook her head and gave a sigh before turning around. Her face returned to normal, and her smile turned back into her normal, gentle, and dignified smile. "Mother, did you end your communication with Chairman Su?" It was unknown when Prince Raymond appeared behind 70. 70 nodded at him and waved her hand. "Contact the two empires and tell them that they don't need to worry about New Flyer." Prince Raymond took a deep look at 70 before leaving. After he left, 70 came back to her senses. Looking at the long-distance magic communication device that no longer had any magic illusions, her expression became very complicated before she finally gave a long sigh. Chapter 12:10. Because of Su-yi's return, the Kanla Empire's offensive against the Mana Magic Kingdom suddenly slowed down and even stopped for a while. The Mana Magic Kingdom did not take this opportunity to launch a counterattack, and both sides seemed to have tacitly decided to stop the war at the same time. However, everyone was very clear that whether it was the Kanla Empire or the Mana Magic Kingdom, they were actually waiting for Su-yi's reaction. But Su-yi had already returned to signs for nearly half a year in the blink of an eye, but he had never publicly expressed any views on the war between the two countries. The New Flyer officials were still the same as before, doing things according to their own plans, and also did not have any plans to deeply intervene in the war between the two countries. This kind of stable, yet somewhat strange situation continued for a long time, and just when everyone thought that the Kanla Empire might choose to stop the war because of Su-yi's attitude, the Kanla Empire suddenly launched a full-scale and fierce offensive against the Mana Magic Kingdom, and captured even more of the Mana Magic Kingdom's territory. Countless people were very shocked by the Kanla Empire's sudden action. The Kandra Empire doing this? Could it be that they weren't worried about angering Su-yi and causing the Frestec Chamber of Commerce to interfere? But the New Flyer was still indifferent to this, as if it had nothing to do with them at all. As for Su, he had never shown his face in public, so of course, no one knew his true thoughts. So the Kanla Empire's offensive against the Mana Magic Kingdom continued to strengthen, and after another 2 months, the Mana Magic Kingdom finally could not hold on and chose to surrender to the Kanla Empire. Of course, the Avatar did not mean that the Mana Magic Kingdom was destroyed. Even if the Kamla Empire's strength had greatly surpassed the Mana Magic Kingdom, it was almost impossible to completely destroy such a huge country like the Mana Magic Kingdom. The Avatar chosen by the Mana Magic Kingdom was only agreeing to the various conditions proposed by the Kamla Empire and signing a ceasefire agreement with the Kamla Empire. No one knew the specific content of this ceasefire agreement, but according to the Kamla Empire's official disclosure, one could know that the Mana Magic Kingdom had paid a huge price. One of the most important conditions was that the Mana Magic Kingdom actually allowed the Kamla Empire to directly station 13 cities in the northwest territory of the Mana Magic Kingdom. This condition was almost equivalent to declaring that the sovereignty of the Mana Magic Kingdom had been greatly infringed. In addition to the garrisons, the various resources within the Mana Magic Kingdom were fully open to the Kamla Empire. Therefore, the price they had to pay was immeasurable. However, what really surprised people was not the painful price that the Mana Magic Kingdom had paid, but the fact that the name of the Lampari Kingdom had actually appeared in the ceasefire agreement. The various resources within the Mana Magic Kingdom were not only open to the Kamla Empire, but also to the Lampari Kingdom. Once this news was released, it immediately caused countless people to be surprised. Why would the Lampari Kingdom participate in this? Could it be that the Lampari Kingdom had secretly cooperated with the Kamla Empire and had actually contributed greatly to the war against the Mana Magic Kingdom? Otherwise, with the strength of the Kamla Empire, why would they share a piece of the fat meat that was already in their mouth with the Lampari Kingdom? However, what really surprised the people of the Signs was still to come. After the Kamla Empire and the Mana Magic Kingdom officially signed the ceasefire agreement, it announced that after 11 years, the war that had caused unrest in the Signs had finally come to an end. However, it also announced that the situation in the Signs had once again undergone a huge change. In the middle of May, year 3816 of the Continental Calendar, the Kamla Empire, the Malar Empire, and the Lampari Kingdom announced at the same time that the Continental Peace Treaty had expired last year. In order to restore order in the Signs and ensure that the Signs would continue to maintain the peaceful development path proposed by the new Flyer President Su-E, they needed to rediscuss this matter. At the beginning of June, at the invitation of the three countries, more than 100 representatives of the Signs gathered in the capital of the Kamla Empire, Wimbledon City. Together, they participated in the Continental Stability Discussion Conference hosted by the Kamla Empire to further discuss the situation in the Signs. After 26 days of intense discussion, finally, the Treaty on the Restriction of the Proliferation of Military Magic Machines proposed by the Kamla Empire, the Malar Empire, and the Lampari Kingdom was approved by the majority of the countries. Out of the 117 countries that participated in the conference, 12 countries declared that they were against the treaty, 26 countries declared that they were in agreement, and the remaining 79 countries all signed their names on the treaty. Following the Continental Peace Treaty and the Continental Magician Peace Treaty that were led by the new Flyer 12 years ago, this was another treaty that received widespread agreement in the Signs. In this Treaty on the Restriction of the Proliferation of Military Magic Machines, it was clearly stated that in order to maintain the peaceful development of the Signs, the military magic machines, which were powerful weapons, must be sufficiently restricted. Therefore, from the date of the signing of this treaty, no country was allowed to casually transfer the military magic machine-related technology that was already in their possession and mentioned in the treaty. Moreover, research related to military magic machines had to be carried out within a controlled range and could not exceed the limit. If this was violated, the corresponding country would be unanimously condemned and sanctioned by the other countries that signed the treaty. Compared to the Continental Peace Treaty that the new Flyer advocated, which didn't even allow countries to privately research and develop military magic machine-related technology, this Treaty on the Restriction of the Proliferation of Military Magic Machines was undoubtedly a lot more relaxed. After all, this new treaty didn't strictly restrict the research and development of military magic machine-related technology by each country, and it also didn't completely restrict the exchange and transfer of military magic machine-related technology. It could be said that it was a lot more relaxed. Of course, everyone understood that the ones that were truly in control of this treaty were the two empires, the Lampari Kingdom, the Kingdom of Ruhr, the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom, and other countries that were rumored to have large amounts of military magic machine technology. As for the other small countries that weren't strong enough, they could only bow their hands and follow orders. How could they dare to disobey? If they really disobeyed, they could only end up like those countries that didn't sign the treaty at the conference. In July, the Kamla Empire, the Malar Empire, the Lampari Kingdom, the Kingdom of Ruhr, the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom, the Duchy of Wales, and the rest of the 79 countries that signed the Treaty on the Restriction of the Proliferation of Military Magic Machines simultaneously announced that they would no longer have any economic dealings with these 12 countries. They also prohibited any citizens of these 12 countries from entering these 79 countries. At the same time, they also restricted the citizens of these 12 countries from entering these 79 countries. Once this news spread, it immediately caused a commotion in the entire continent. When major newspapers reported on this matter, they easily noticed an important problem. The 12 countries that were simultaneously sanctioned by these 79 countries were the 12 countries that clearly opposed the Treaty on the Restriction of the Proliferation of Military Magic Machines at the conference last month. Thus, everyone understood that this was clearly a blatant retaliation against these 12 countries. It could also be said that the 79 countries that signed the treaty, or more accurately, it was a demonstration of strength by the two empires and several emerging countries that represented them. It was clear that the two empires and the Lampari Kingdom wouldn't allow anyone to oppose this treaty that they proposed. And according to the in-depth analysis of some newspapers, this action represented a deeper meaning. The two empires and the Lampari Kingdom clearly wanted to use this treaty to set the rules of the game, and then include all the countries on the signs into their own rules of the game. It was clear that the two empires and the Lampari Kingdom already had a deep foundation in the research of military magic machines, that definitely wanted to prevent other countries from catching up to or even surpassing them in this area. Thus, they proposed this treaty together to restrict other countries. This way, other countries wouldn't be able to make any progress in the research of military magic machines, and naturally wouldn't be able to compare with them in terms of military strength. Thus, as long as nothing unexpected happened, in the end, only the two empires and the Lampari Kingdom would be left on the signs. They would have the strongest military magic machines and corresponding military strength, and the other countries could only bow their heads and listen to them. Don't want to listen? Although the two empires and the Lampari Kingdom signed the Treaty on the Restriction of the Proliferation of Military Magic Machines, they didn't sign it and didn't even mention renewing the Continental Peace Treaty. This meant that they had the right to start a war at any time. In front of them, which country dared to be inconsiderate? To put it bluntly, the countries that wanted to express their opposition at the conference weren't just the 12 countries. However, the reason why more countries chose to sign the treaty was because they were afraid of the two empires and the Lampari Kingdom. But because of this, some people expressed their doubts. The two empires, and even the Lampari Kingdom, came out to stir up trouble and put on a posture of wanting to control the signs. Then, what about the new flyer? Who should be the most powerful and have the most power to express their stance? If the new flyer expressed their opposition to this treaty, then wouldn't this treaty be just a piece of paper? However, when everyone focused their attention on the new flyer, they discovered that the new flyer still didn't express any opinion. This was because there was an extremely important matter for the new flyer that was approaching. That matter was Freya's 25th birthday. Chapter 12:11. Freya, have you thought it through? Su-E asked Freya with a serious expression. Freya didn't hesitate too much as she nodded at Su-E with a serious expression. Yes, Sir Father, I've thought it through. Then what is your decision? Su-E asked again. Freya took a deep breath and looked at Steel with a trace of worry on her face. Her eyes swept over Agnes and the others who were also worried before finally looking at Su-yi. She met Su-yi's calm gaze and replied, "Sir Father, my decision is to take over the position of new flyer." As soon as her voice fell, the people around her all let out a sigh of relief, and their expressions instantly relaxed. Although before this, everyone believed that Freya would take over the position of New Flyer's chairman and replace Su-yi in leading the New Flyer. But Su-yi kept emphasizing that he would give Freya a chance to make her own choice when she turned 25. This caused many people to feel worried. This worry wasn't only because of Freya, but also because of the New Flyer. If Freya unexpectedly didn't want to take over the New Flyer, then where would Su-yi find a suitable successor? Su-yi had determined a long time ago that Freya was his only successor, so only Freya had the qualifications to take over the position of New Flyer's chairman. As for the other children, even if Steel was Su-yi's remaining son, they didn't have the qualifications. If Freya didn't want to take over, wouldn't that mean that the next chairman of New Flyer would be someone other than the Su family? Although no one doubted that Su-yi still had a strong influence on New Flyer, it was still a cause for concern. Therefore, in many people's eyes, Freya taking over as the president of the New Flyer was a happy scene for everyone. However, Su-yi wasn't happy about Freya's decision. Instead, he pondered for a moment and asked, "Freya, are you sure this is what you really think? Is this a decision you made after careful consideration?" Freya smiled. Her big eyes narrowed into a pair of beautiful crescent moons, showing that she was in a good mood. "Father, I know what you're worried about. Don't worry, this is my own decision. No one is pressuring me, even if it's my mother." Freya turned to look at Steel. Then, she walked over and held Steel's arm. "Even my mother didn't mention much about this. She even often told me that she hoped that I could live a happy life." Although Steel was over 50 years old because of the elven race's secret technique, she still looked like she was in her 20s. She didn't even look older than Freya. Standing next to Freya, she looked more like her older sister than her mother. Hearing Freya's words, Steel sighed and said, "Su-yi, because you're the president of New Flyer, you're too busy. You don't have much time to stay at home, and even less time to accompany us. I don't want Freya to be like you, so busy that she forgets the meaning of life." The corner of Su-yi's eye twitched. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. If they were talking about work, Steel, as the president of a New Moon Chamber of Commerce, was no less busy than him as the president of a New Flyer. Even when the New Moon Chamber of Commerce was developing rapidly, Steel, as the president, had to do a lot of things herself. This caused her to be away from home much more than Su-yi. Now that she said that Su-yi didn't have enough time to accompany his family, Su-yi felt a bit dissatisfied. Of course, now was not the time to argue about this. Su-yi thought for a bit and asked Freya with a bit of curiosity, "Freya, actually I always thought that you would refuse this responsibility. After all, you've always told me that you want to live a free life. Now that you want to be the president of the New Flyer, do you understand the meaning of this position?" Freya giggled and jumped over to hug Su-yi's arm and shook it. "Father, do you think that I haven't done anything in the past few years? I've long understood this position and the terrifying pressure that comes with being the president. But I've thought about it carefully. If a person doesn't do something difficult while they're young, they'll definitely regret it in the future. Are you treating being the president as a challenge?" Su-yi asked with a smile. At least for now." Freya looked at Su-yi with undisguised admiration. "Respected father, you are the one who created the New Flyer and led it to this point. Of course, you're the greatest president of the New Flyer, but my goal is to surpass you." Su-yi couldn't help but laugh loudly. "Very good. You have ambition." After saying this, he put his arm around Freya's shoulder and turned her in a half circle. He let her face the crowd and loudly announced, "Everyone, I now officially announce to everyone that I, Su-yi, will no longer be the president of the New Flyer from today onwards. As for the president position, it will temporarily be held by Freya, who I've proposed." Who supports this proposal? Who objects? Of course, no one objected. Su-yi waited quietly for a moment. Then, he raised his voice again and said, "Well then, I now announce that Freya will be the acting president of the New Flyer from today onwards." After a moment of silence in the large auditorium of the New Flight Commerce main base, a storm of applause instantly broke out. Countless faint blue magic lights that represented the operation of the magic camera rang out, firmly recording this scene. He believed that in less than 2 days, everything that happened in front of him would appear in all the newspapers of the Signs continent, and everyone would know about it. The importance of changing the president of the New Flyer was comparable to the change of the emperors of 2 empires. Hashtag as expected. The news of a New Flyer changing its president spread throughout Signs in the shortest amount of time possible. No one was surprised by Freya's replacement. This was because ever since Freya participated in the affairs of a New Flyer for the first time and was known by the public, the large newspapers had placed a large amount of attention on this girl who was born with a golden spoon in her mouth. Various matters and rumors related to Freya had also spread through Signs over the years. Everyone knew that she was Su Yi's only recognized successor, so it was natural for her to take over the position of the New Flyer's president. No one was surprised by this. Compared to this, what people cared about was what Su Yi would do after he left his position as president. Although no one doubted that Su Yi could still control the New Flyer, he was no longer the president of the New Flyer in name. He couldn't command everything in the New Flyer like before. In the end, the successor was Freya, which was both good and bad for Su Yi. The good thing was that the leader of the New Flyer was his daughter, so the New Flyer was still firmly in his hands. The bad thing was that because Freya was his daughter, she could naturally take over all kind of power from him. Su Yi couldn't complain too much about this, because after all, he was the one who personally pushed Freya to the position of president. Therefore, after Freya took over the position of president, Su Yi would definitely reduce his influence on the New Flyer and give Freya enough space to perform. So in reality, what would Su Yi do? Su Yi, who was still being watched by countless people, didn't make them wait for too long. He quickly made it clear to everyone what he was going to do next. After retiring from the position of president, Su Yi suddenly appeared in the capital of the Kamla Empire, Wimbledon City, after disappearing in front of everyone for a full 2 months. He participated in the annual Magic Machine Industry Conference of the continent. This was originally a very normal thing, because the New Flyer was bound to be the protagonist of this conference. And as the president of the New Flyer, Su Yi, as long as he participated, he would definitely be the core of the conference. But this time, because he had resigned from the position of president of the New Flyer, it was the first time Su Yi participated in this conference in his own name. However, Su Yi, who appeared at the conference, still attracted everyone's attention without any difficulty. But Su Yi didn't mention anything about the New Flyer from beginning to end. Even if someone took the initiative to mention it, he would change the topic. Everyone could see that Su Yi was deliberately revealing his current identity to everyone, trying to get rid of the brand of the New Flyer. However, whether or not anyone would really see it that way was a matter worth debating, of course. Not discussing the New Flyer didn't mean that Su Yi had nothing to do with this conference. On the contrary, he was very active in this conference, even more so than every time he participated in this conference in the past. At the conference, Su Yi said that he hoped to establish a magic machine industry technology foundation dedicated to encouraging technological breakthroughs in the magic machine industry. As long as someone could make a breakthrough in the magic machine industry technology, they would receive a high reward from this foundation. As long as you could prove that you had the opportunity to make an important breakthrough, you could also receive the support of the foundation. At first, many people were puzzled by this. Vigorously researching and developing technology related to the magic machine industry was something that all the countries in the Signs, the majority of chambers of commerce, and countless people were actively participating in. Even if there was no foundation set up by Su Yi, a bunch of people would still desperately invest in it. What was the point of Su Yi creating such a so-called foundation? But after listening to Su Yi's detailed explanation and serious analysis, everyone realized that Su Yi's plan was much bigger than they thought. Think about it. The New Flyer could completely represent the pinnacle of the magic machine industry technology. And as the president, Oh no, the former president, Su Yi, was the benchmark of the magic machine industry in everyone's eyes. The Magic Machine Industry Technology Foundation that he founded and led was bound to become the most authoritative organization in the magic machine industry technology in people's minds. This could be compared to the previous Continental Sorcerers Guild. It was just that the Continental Sorcerers Guild was responsible for evaluating the individual level of the mages. But Su Yi's Magic Machine Industry Technology Foundation directly evaluated the technology itself, raising the level by a lot. Not to mention, what he could do was far more than just evaluating. Chapter 1212. Your Majesty, this is the report from the Magic Machine Industry Department today. The palace attendant carefully placed the document in his hand on the table in front of the Kandra Emperor and tiptoed back. The Kandra Emperor had a dark look as he looked at the report in front of him for 2 minutes before reaching out to open it. However, he only flipped through it for less than a minute before he flung it away. The neatly stacked documents scattered in several pages that fluttered in the air. It looked a bit beautiful, but because it contained the anger of the Kamla Empire's emperor, it looked a bit fierce. Go and call Karma Marquis over. After a while, the Kandra Emperor gave this order in a low and deep voice. The chamberlain hurriedly ran away. Not long after, a middle-aged man who wasn't that tall, but was very strong came in with the attendant. Your Majesty, the Kamla Empire's magic machine industry Minister Karma Marquis gave a serious bow to the Kandra Emperor. You summoned me? I summoned you? The Kandra Emperor gave a laugh of ridicule and pointed at the documents scattered on the ground. Could it be that it wasn't you who handed in these reports? Karma Marquis was silent for a bit before lowering his head and replying in a deep voice, Since this is something that happened in the Empire, I didn't dare hide it from your Majesty, so naturally I had to report it. If you report everything for me to take care of, then what do I need you ministers for? The Kandra Emperor's expression became even colder. The Kandra Emperor's expression became even colder. Or could it be that the respected Kamla Empire's magic machine industry department can't even solve this small problem? Karma Marquis looked at the papers on the ground and couldn't help revealing a bitter smile. He was very clear that the problem in this report definitely wasn't a small problem. He was very clear that His Majesty also knew that this wasn't a small problem. The reason why His Majesty was so angry was because he couldn't think of a good solution. This made the Honorable His Majesty feel frustrated, so he was angry. In fact, this was not the first time Karma Marquis had submitted such a report. Since 2 months ago, he had been handing in one such report at regular intervals. So far, he had accumulated as many as 7 such reports. As for the content of the document, it was more or less the same thing. It was nothing more than a certain Chamber of Commerce in the Kamla Empire failing to pass the preliminary assessment of the magic industry in the continent. Damn Su Yi. If it wasn't for the fact that this guy had set up a Magic Machine Industry Technology Foundation and claimed that he was going to classify and evaluate all the magic machine industry technologies on the continent, why would there be so much trouble? Although this guy said that after the evaluation, it would be more beneficial to the overall, stable, and rapid development of the magic industry on the continent, which would be beneficial to all countries and people. But at least in Carmen Count's opinion, this thing would only bring endless trouble. Just in the past 2 months alone, there were as many as 13 chambers of commerce in the Kamla Empire that went bankrupt because of this damned evaluation. There were even as many as 36 chambers of commerce that were on the verge of bankruptcy because of this damned evaluation. Su Yi still had the nerve to say that he never had the intention to target any country or chamber of commerce. He only evaluated based on objective standards. Why were there so many chambers of commerce in the Kamla Empire affected, but not even half of the chambers of commerce in the Malar Empire were affected? As for the new flyer, among the types of technology that New Flyer was evaluated, almost all of them were at least level 4, which was much higher than the average level of the other chambers of commerce. Of course, to be fair, New Flyer was originally the benchmark of the Sign's magic machine industry, so it was natural for them to be ahead of the other chambers of commerce in terms of technology. Even in some small technology categories, New Flyer wasn't the best, and their evaluation standards were even lower than some outstanding companies. It had to be known, if it was 10 years ago, this would have been impossible. But even if Carmen Marquis was clear on this, it was impossible for him to calm down. Suyi's actions had already seriously affected the order of the magic machine industry in the Kanla Empire. As the minister of the Kanla Empire's magic machine industry, how could Carmen Marquis praise Suyi's actions? This Suyi, even if he's no longer the chairman of the New Flyer, he's still this annoying. Carmen Marquis looked up in a daze, looking at the Kandra Emperor with an unhappy look. This was what he was thinking, but he never thought that the Emperor would say it first. Carmen Marquis' thoughts quickly turned, and he instantly understood. His Majesty being angry at him wasn't because he wasn't satisfied with his work. Rather, it was because he was venting his anger at Suyi on him. Thinking of this, Carmen Marquis' heart calmed down. After thinking about it, he said in a deep voice, "Your Majesty, this is not a small problem. I hope that you can treat this seriously and attach importance to it. Suyi can casually take out a standard and make the magic machine industry companies of the Empire suffer heavy losses. If you don't restrict him, as long as Suyi is willing, wouldn't he be able to make a large number of companies suffer heavy losses? Even, he can seriously affect the magic machine industry of the Empire." Of course I know this. The Kandra Emperor gave a cold snort. Carmen gave a cold snort. The problem is, how are you planning on restricting him? Could it be that you want to learn from the Man of Magic Kingdom and chase out the New Flyer? No, of course not. Marquis Carmen immediately shook his head. Carmen shook his head. The restriction I'm talking about isn't aimed at the New Flyer. There are no benefits to the Empire at all. Humph, you also know this. The Kandra Emperor's expression relaxed a bit before he asked, "Then what do you want to say?" "Your Majesty, when the Sorcerers Guild was created, the Sorcerers Guild wasn't the only organization that evaluated magicians on the signs." Carmen Marquis tactfully expressed his opinion. "You mean that we should also create a technology rating organization to fight against Suyi's foundation?" The Kandra Emperor's eyes lit up before he knit his brows again. His brows knitted. Suyi has the support of the New Flyer and his authority as a guarantee. What can we use to go against him? Carmen Marquis revealed a faint smile. "Your Majesty, behind us are all the countries on the signs." All the countries? The smile on Carmen Marquis' face became a bit strange. "Your Majesty, I think, on the continent, the one who thinks that Suyi is too annoying isn't just you. ####, the Magic Machine Industry Technology Foundation that Suyi had created had been established for less than half a year, and it had already shown great results. With Suyi's high prestige and his absolute authority in the magic machine industry, every time a skill evaluation standard was announced, it would become a standard that everyone agreed on. Although there wasn't any strong method to support Suyi's foundation, because of Suyi's authority, once the foundation announced that a company's skill evaluation wasn't high enough or couldn't even reach the most basic standard, they would be discriminated against by everyone. Not only would the related companies cut off their cooperation with this company, but even ordinary people would directly treat this company's products as inferior products and refuse to buy them. It could be said that as soon as the foundation's evaluation came out, it naturally divided the various companies related to the magic machine industry and signs into a clear grade. If it was a company with a high evaluation, it would naturally be valued by countless people and obtain a large number of cooperation opportunities, brand recognition, and immeasurable profits. At the same time, this evaluation standard wasn't just limited to the companies. In fact, when Suyi first announced this evaluation standard, it was targeted at each individual skill. It was just that most of the companies that owned the patents for these skills were now the various companies. Therefore, the companies that obtained more highly rated skills were regarded as the powerful ones with high evaluation. However, there were also some small research groups and even individuals who achieved breakthroughs in the technology related to the magic machine industry. As a result, They were recognized by the Foundation, and their individual technology was rated as advanced. What awaited them were naturally fame, opportunities, and most importantly, large amounts of gold coins. In less than half a year, the Magic Machine Industry Technology Foundation had successfully discovered more than 20 research groups and researchers that weren't famous before, but had great strength and potential. The various skills that they recommended were quickly proven, thus further establishing the Foundation's authority. Now in science, researching the magic machine industry was the most popular job. But previously, there were more than 1 million types of related skills, and there weren't many that were really useful. Now, after the Foundation's evaluation and recommendation, more useful skills were promoted. Coupled with the Foundation's huge rewards for high-quality skills, countless people's enthusiasm for research was even higher. Therefore, in less than half a year, the magic machine technology and science had once again improved significantly. Whenever the major newspapers talked about this, they would always be amazed. He was really able to surprise people at any time, and all of his actions were based on his original intention to develop the magic machine industry. If this trend continued, the foundation founded by He was very likely to become an important organization that influenced the entire situation in science, just like the New Flyer. However, the development of this foundation, just like the New Flyer, would not be smooth sailing. Chapter 12-13. It was a new year. Before the New Year's enthusiasm had faded in signs, there was a piece of news that came from the Kamla Empire that attracted the attention of countless people. At the beginning of February, there was a group incident that occurred in a small town in the Kamla Empire's northern province's Clare City. The residents of the small town had fallen into a coma at the same time, and it took them an entire 3 days to wake up. Although the residents of the small town didn't have any problems after waking up, this matter created a stir in the Kamla Empire's northern province. The northern province's governor manor attached great importance to this matter, and under the orders of the empire's parliament, they began investigating this matter. In the end, after various investigations, the results were a bit unexpected. The northern province's governor manor's reason for this group of people falling unconscious was actually because of the magic air conditioners that the residents of the small town used. The results of the investigation showed that because the magic air conditioners of the residents had been running for a long time, it would slowly affect the surrounding environment. In the end, it would accumulate and change the air around it. It was fine normally, but once it reached a certain level, it would cause people to temporarily lose consciousness. The magic air conditioners of the residents of the small town didn't reach this level before, but this year's winter in signs was much colder than before, so the frequency of use of the magic air conditioners increased. It quickly accumulated to the point where it was easy for problems to occur, finally causing this group of people to fall unconscious. There were many people who still had doubts about this explanation. According to the investigation, the magic air conditioners of the residents of the small town were all made by the same company. Of course, it wasn't New Flyer, but rather a company in the Kamla Empire called the Rio Tinto Household Magic Machine Company. These magic air conditioners were the Rio Tinto Household Magic Air Conditioners. Everyone's question was that the Rio Tinto Household Magic Machine Company was one of the top 3 household magic machine companies in the Kamla Empire. According to the data the Rio Tinto Household Magic Machine Company had announced, they had sold over 100,000 magic air conditioners last year, and most of them were sold to the people of the Kamla Empire. Because the Rio Tinto Household Magic Machine Company was a local company of the Kamla Empire, naturally they received special care. So in the Kamla Empire, there were many places like this town that were monopolized by the Rio Tinto Magic Air Conditioner. So the question was, why didn't other places have this kind of problem, but this small town had a problem? Regarding this, the Northern Province's governor's office used a full month to conduct an in-depth investigation and provide a further explanation. So the reason why only the people of this small town had this problem with the magic air conditioners was because this small town used a new magic energy supply technology. In the household magic machines that people used in the past, What provided the magic energy needed to operate these household magic machines were high-concentration magic crystals. This model had been set since the new flyer was created, and after 30 years, it was considered the standard for all the magic machines and the signs. However, at the beginning of last year, the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce had proposed a new long-distance magic energy supply technology. The method of this technology was to gather large amounts of magic crystals in a supply station, and then through a magic transmission line, this magic energy would be directly transferred to the various magic machines in a special way. This new method had many benefits. For example, after using this new magic energy supply technology, people didn't need to buy high-concentration magic crystals for their household magic machines. Because magic crystals normally appeared in a solid state, different household magic machines required different sizes of magic crystals, so it was a bit troublesome to buy them. After using this new method, they could save this trouble. As long as they paid a fixed amount to the magic supply station, they would be able to obtain enough magic energy at any time. Moreover, because the magic supply station had a new method of processing the magic crystals, it could maximize the magic energy contained within, allowing people to use these magic crystals more efficiently. Even if using a special line would consume a portion of the magic energy, compared to the magic crystals in the magic machines that wasted magic energy most of the time, this new method of using magic energy was much more efficient. Because of this, the cost of using this new method of energy consumption was much lower. In summary, the cost of using these magic machines was much lower. Other than this, with this new magic energy supply method, it would help the magic machines operate more stably. It would prevent people from buying low-quality magic crystals, which would affect the performance and lifespan of the magic machines. Although there was a disadvantage to this method, which was that the position of the magic machines would be fixed and they couldn't move it around like before, there were many benefits without a doubt. So when the new flyer proposed this concept last year, it was the same as the new flyer's previous actions, immediately gaining popularity. After that, the new flyer cooperated with several countries and chose some pilots in these countries to test this new magic energy supply method. This small town was one of the pilots. After this incident, the Northern Province's Governor Manor found that the main reason for the hidden problem in the magic air conditioner was this new magic energy supply method. The results of the investigation showed that because of the magic supply station and the dense magic transmission lines that connected it, it caused the magic space to vibrate at a special frequency when it was operating, which greatly increased the effect of the magic air conditioner. In the end, it exploded and caused a group of people to fall unconscious. After the Northern Province's Governor Manor announced this result, it immediately created an uproar. Most people's first reaction was disbelief. Since the new flyer invented the magic air conditioner, it had been over 20 years. After all these years, there were countless people in countless countries that used the magic air conditioner. How could something like this have never happened before, and why did it happen this time? So people looked at the magic air conditioner with doubtful gazes. In the past 10 years, there was only the Xinfei Magic Air Conditioner brand. The magic air conditioner of the magic air conditioner of the other brands had only appeared in recent years. When the Xinfei Magic Air Conditioner appeared in tens of thousands of households, there weren't any problems. Now that this had happened with the magic air conditioner, it must be a problem with the magic air conditioner. But when the Northern Province's Governor Manor's investigation report was published in the newspapers, it shattered this guess. According to the investigation, the problem was with the magic air conditioner itself, and it wasn't related to the company. The reason was that each magic air conditioner had a magic air compressor module. Whether it was cooling or heating, it would use the magic energy provided by the magic crystal to affect the air, creating cold air or warm air. The one that caused the surrounding environment and the most obvious influence on the air was this module. It wasn't related to any company. Even if the people of this small town all used the Xinfei magic air conditioner, this matter would still have happened. This conclusion created an uproar. It could even be said that it created a shock in the signs. In people's impression, the magic machines of a new flyer were known for their superior performance and outstanding quality. Although they had heard of some small problems with the magic machines of the new flyer, they were all individual problems and couldn't be considered a problem with the new flyer. However, this time, the one that caused such a large problem was the magic air compressor module of the magic air conditioner. It had to be known, although the new flyer had already sold the technology for the magic air conditioner, creating many companies that could make magic air conditioners in the signs. But up until now, the only company that could make a qualified magic air compressor module was the Frestec Chamber of Commerce. This meant that whether it was the Xinfei Magic Air Conditioner or the Rio Magic Air Conditioner, the core component of the Magic Air Compressor module was made by the new flyer. Now that there was such a large problem with this module, there was no doubt that it would have a large impact on the reputation of the new flyer. People would naturally be worried because of this. If the Magic Air Conditioner made by the new flyer had this kind of problem, wouldn't the other magic machines also have this kind of problem? If it was like this, didn't that mean that using all magic machines could cause one to lose consciousness? Moreover, according to the investigation results of the Northern Province's Governor Manor, if this situation became more serious, it could even be fatal. Using the magic air conditioner could cause one to lose their life. This terrifying possibility caused the expressions of everyone who received the news to change. The problem was only with the magic air conditioner, but if there were strange problems with the other magic machines in the future, what would they do? Between the various household magic machines that could make life more comfortable in their little lives, would there be anyone who didn't know what to choose? Chapter 12:14. Pump. Encado slapped the table with an angry look as he roared in a low voice. This is a plot against our company. The other people in the room all looked at him. After a while, the current executive chairman of the Xinfei Heavy Magic Machine Company, or Xinfei Heavy Magic Machine Company for short, the Human Quell Trust, shook his head with a bitter smile. Encado, everyone knows that this is a plot from the Kanla Empire, specially targeting our new flyer. But the problem is, how should we deal with it? Sitting beside Quell Trust was the current executive chairman of the Xinfei Energy Company, the Elf Rossel. If it was said that in this matter, the one that was affected the most was the Xinfei Household Magical Machine Chamber of Commerce led by Encado, which was called Xinfei Household Magical Machine Company for short. The second one that was affected was the Xinfei Energy Company led by Rossel. In the investigation report of the Kanla Empire's Northern Governor Manor, the thing that caused the mass coma was the magic power supply station and the long-distance magic transmission network in the small town. These things were built by the Xinfei Energy Company. So after this matter broke out, the pressure Rossel suffered wasn't any less than Encado's. Hearing Quell Trust's words, Rossel knit his brows to think before asking Encado. Encado, have you investigated the magic air compressor modules of the magic air conditioners? Were there any problems with the tests? What's the problem? Encado angrily gave a cold snort. The Kanla Empire said that the magic air conditioners caused such a large problem, so they wanted to collect them all and study them to prevent the same thing from happening again. They didn't let the people I sent touch them at all, so how did they investigate? Rossel shook his head. I don't believe that you won't do anything. Encado curled his lips and said with a sigh, I had people find another batch of magic air conditioners to test, and at the same time, I collected a portion of each brand's magic air conditioner. I also took out the magic air compressor modules and did a high-pressure test. Facts have proven that there are no problems at all. Those fellows from the Kanla Empire are all speaking nonsense. The problem is that not many people will believe you even if you take the results out. The new flyer's external department manager, Fei, who was sitting across from Encado, said in a cold voice. Encto immediately felt dejected. That's right. No matter how thorough the tests are, not many people will believe me if I say it out loud. Those fellows would rather believe the Kanla Empire's nonsense than believe the detailed test results from us. It really makes me feel helpless. That's normal. Feywin smiled. President has told me many times in the past that ordinary citizens will always have the stupidity to break through your bottom line. Between safety and danger, they will always believe in danger rather than safety. It's Faye, Faye one trust, Faye one trust, Faye. Hearing the words, Mr. President, everyone couldn't help but turn their heads and look at the main seat in the conference room. However, what welcomed their gaze was not Su Yi's familiar face, but the beautiful and smiling Freya. Everyone sighed in their hearts. If it was Su Yi sitting there, then even if the problems they encountered were several times more serious, they wouldn't feel worried at all. They believed that Su Yi would definitely lead them to solve all the problems they encountered. However, it was Freya now. Looking at her beautiful and youthful face, no one could gain any confidence from it. Freya had been the president for more than half a year. Of course, she could guess what everyone was thinking from the subtle changes in their expressions. She didn't mind that these subordinates didn't trust her as the president because she was definitely not as good as Su Yi. This was a fact that couldn't be changed. To establish the same status and image as Su Yi in everyone's hearts, it would take a lot of effort. Supervisor Feiwen, President Enkato, I think you all should understand that to solve the impact of this incident on our company, we can't just stop at the company's products. We have to solve the doubts in people's hearts. Freya smiled and said, even if Freya's position in everyone's hearts couldn't compare to Su Yi's, since she had spoken, everyone calmed down and looked at her, giving her a respectful look. Yes, President. Feiwen nodded. We must continue to spread the word and tell everyone that this incident has nothing to do with the products of our Chamber of Commerce. It was just a coincidence, an incident with a very small probability of happening. No. Freya directly interrupted Feiwen. We have to make everyone believe that this is not a coincidence, nor is it a small probability event. It's something that shouldn't have happened. Everyone looked at Freya in a daze. Enkato couldn't help asking, President, according to the results of the investigation from the Kanla Empire, this matter is indeed a bit related to our products, although it isn't that big. That's right, President. Feiwen also said, I understand that you want to separate our company from this matter and not be affected at all, but I'm afraid that isn't possible. After all, those magic air conditioners are clearly related to our company. Freya, however, looked straight at Ankto and asked in a deep voice, President Ankto, you just said that you've done a lot of stress tests. Then in these tests, have there been any problems like the Kanla Empire's report? Freya asked. No. Then do you think that if we continue with the stress tests, there will be similar problems? This time, Enkato hesitated. After a while, he replied with knitted brows, I'm not certain. This is because when the magic air compressor module is working, it will indeed affect the surrounding air. If there are special situations, Enkato spread his hands with a helpless look on his face. So you also think that this matter is possible? Freya asked. Enkato was silent for a bit before nodding with a bitter smile. I can't completely deny this possibility. Freya nodded and didn't ask him anything else. She turned to look at Evita, who was sitting in front of her. Chief Evita, in the Academy of Magic's research, has there been any research that proves that the changes in the magic space will affect the human body? Evita didn't understand what Freya meant, but she honestly nodded and replied, Of course there is, and it has already become public knowledge. Actually, all traditional magic can be described in this way. Everyone was stunned, but after thinking about it, they understood. Indeed, the so-called magic, wasn't it using magic to affect the magic elements in the magic space, finally causing the environment to change, forming all kinds of magic that could directly affect the human body? Then, is there a clear boundary in this area of research? For example, above what energy level will it cause serious harm to the human body, even causing them to faint? Or below what energy level it won't affect the human body at all? Evita knit her brows even tighter. This is very hard to define since each magic has different effects. After saying this, Evita's eyes suddenly lit up as she suddenly realized something. I understand. F.O. Chairman, your meaning is that you want us to analyze the various magic phenomena in detail and determine if it will cause serious harm to the human body, even causing people to faint? Freya revealed a sweet but forced serious smile as she nodded. It is impossible to analyze all the magic phenomena in a short period of time. I just hope that the Academy of Magic can send a small team to thoroughly research the magic phenomena in this incident. This is to prevent a similar situation from happening again. Evita revealed a faint smile. All right, I understand. Freya turned her head to look at Encanto again and asked seriously, Chairman Encanto, do you not have confidence in your products? Encanto was stunned. Why do you ask? If you have confidence, why would you have that kind of thought? Encanto knit his brows. The other people in the room also knit their brows. Although Encanto's words were a bit weak, it could be considered a safe stance since no one could guarantee that there wouldn't be any problems with the magic machines. Continue to do the pressure tests. We have to do the best for each special situation. This is not only to give others a satisfactory result, but also to make our company's products better in the future. As for others who don't believe in this result, they won't believe it 100 times, 1,000 times, or even 10,000 times. But what about 100,000 times, 1,000,000 times? They have no choice but to believe it. Encanto took a deep breath and looked at Freya with a serious gaze. Chairman, I understand what you mean. Yes, our new Flyers products can withstand the harshest and longest tests. Those who don't have confidence in us won't be able to leave our products, even if they don't have confidence in us. All right, that's it. Freya smiled and nodded at Encanto. She then turned to look at Russell and Fane and said with a serious expression, since the long-distance magic transmission technology has achieved stable results for more than half a year, it means that it has the qualifications to be promoted on a large scale. So, Manager Fane, in the next Duchy's Parliament, propose a proposal in the name of our new flyer to promote the long-distance magic transmission technology in the Principality of Constantine. The initial plan is to build 500 magic power supply stations in the Duchy. Everyone's eyes were wide open as they looked at Freya in a daze. When Sue E was the new Flyers chairman, everyone felt that Sue E was a madman and would often come up with crazy ideas. But now, after Freya took over as chairman, her performance was not inferior to Sue Yi's at all, doing things that were just as crazy and bold. After everyone was stunned, they could only helplessly smile bitterly. This really was like father like daughter. Chapter 12:15. Sir President, the results of the investigation are out. There are indeed traces of a magic array outside Chitamla town, but these traces are very faint. There are more than 200 types of magic arrays deduced from them, and it is impossible to determine which magic array it is. We don't need to know which magic array it is. As long as we know that there are traces of a magic array, that's enough. Sue E smiled slightly. You did a good job, but the investigation of this matter ends here. There's no need to continue. The man in black, who was bowing and standing opposite Sue E, raised his head in astonishment. Aren't you going to continue the investigation? Sir President, this is obviously a conspiracy against our Chamber of Commerce. And it may also be a conspiracy against the Foundation. Are you going to let those people go just like that? I didn't say that I was going to let them go. He shook his head. But for this matter alone, it's enough as long as we make it clear that some people want to play some tricks. The specific handling of the matter is something that Freya and the others should consider, and it has nothing to do with me. After all, I'm no longer the president of New Flyer, am I not? Sir President, this is not. He raised his hand and interrupted him. Roke, I'll remind you again, I'm no longer the president of New Flyer. Don't always call me that. It's easy to cause misunderstandings. The man in black, who was called Roke, curled his lips. He agreed verbally, but he disagreed in his heart. Although President Freya was the president's biological daughter, in his mind, it was impossible for her to be compared with the president. Then, sir, Roke opened his mouth and suddenly realized that if he didn't address Sue E with the familiar Sir President, he didn't know how to address him for a while. You can call me Sir Count. After all, I'm also the officially recognized Count of the Principality of Constantine, right? He saw his embarrassment and helped him out with a smile. Roke frowned, and his expression was a little awkward. All right, well, Lord Count, since this matter is clearly a scheme of the Canla Empire, are you really not worried about letting Miss Freya deal with it alone? Why not? He spread his hands. This is something that she will experience after all. She will encounter many similar things in the future. It's better to get used to it early. Besides, she's handling it well, isn't she? Ruoka smiled slightly. He thought about the series of actions New Flyer had taken a while ago, and thought that Miss Freya had indeed performed very well this time. When people had doubts about long-distance magic power transmission technology and magic machines, they did the exact opposite and promoted it on a large scale in the Principality of Constantine. They focused all their doubts on the promotion of the New Flyer and used facts to dispel their doubts. It had to be said that this was a very direct and effective solution. The only problem was that it was very likely that those with ulterior motives would seize this opportunity to make a move. If there was another problem in the large-scale promotion of the New Flyer, then the reputation of the New Flyer and even all the magic machines would be greatly questioned in people's hearts. How could Sui not understand this crucial problem? So he was already prepared. Roke, you should have made the arrangements on your side, right? Please, Lord Count, rest assured, everything has been arranged properly. There won't be any problems. That's good. If that's the case, I should be looking forward to someone taking the initiative to come knocking on my door. Roke chuckled. I'm also looking forward to it. After explaining the arrangements for the Principality of Constantine to Roke, Sui waved his hand and dismissed Roke. Watching Roke's back disappear out the door, Sui sighed softly. Roke led a special force under the name of the New Flyers Guards, but directly under Sui. Their mission was to help the New Flyer investigate, arrange some things that could not be made clear, and also carry out some secret operations. This time, something like this happened in the Kanla Empire, but they used various means to refuse the New Flyers' open assistance in the investigation, hindering people from getting the truth. Sui sent Roke without hesitation. As an elven warrior who was proficient in concealment, Roke also had a deep understanding of magic. Sending him to investigate the mass coma incident in the small town of Chitanlu could be said to be a piece of cake. But Sui really didn't care much about the truth he found out. The use of magic machines would have a certain impact on the magic space and cause some fluctuations in the real space. This was a fact that had long been known. It was just that this effect was actually very slight and would not cause any harm to the human body. Just like how many people on Earth would always talk about the dangers of all kinds of radiation to the human body, but except for the really strong radiation, such as nuclear radiation, ordinary radiation was everywhere, but it would not have any harmful effects on the human body. The people who came to Earth had lived in modern technology for so many years, but they still made such a common-sense mistake, let alone these people in signs. Even from the day the New Flyer was founded, the magic industry in signs had only developed for 30 years, and it had only been more than 10 years since it was promoted on a large scale. Before that, signs was still in a very backward semi-slave and semi-feudal society stage, and the level of science and technology was extremely low. So in the process of rapid social change, this kind of fallacy and unnecessary panic was also something that Sui had expected. Sui appreciated Freya's way of handling it this time. Since the ordinary people had doubts about the long-range magic power transmission technology and even the entire magic industry because of this incident, then he would use facts to tell them that their doubts were meaningless. Since the magic industry had already developed, it was impossible to go backwards. People had already fully enjoyed the convenience brought to their lives by all kinds of magic machines, so how could they bear to abandon it? As long as Freya used facts to tell people that the incident in Shadamla town was fake, then the doubts in people's hearts would of course vanish. Sui was not particularly concerned about the impact of how Freya and New Flyer, which was led by her, would deal with this incident. What he really cared about was the intentions of some people in this incident. Since Ruoka had found traces of a magic array in Shadamla town, then the fact of this incident must have been done by someone behind the scenes, causing the incident to break out. Then, the dirty water was poured on New Flyer, and even Sui through the Rio Tinto Chamber of Commerce. Sui did not care about some dirty water, but he was very concerned about the fact that the other party had made the people have doubts about the magic machines themselves in this incident. Su Yi's dream had always been to fully promote the magic industry in this world and fully promote the level of science and technology in this world. And now, in order to deal with New Flyer and Su Yi, these people used such despicable means, which seriously affected Su Yi's plan. He could not tolerate this. After thinking about it in his mind, Su Yi snorted coldly and walked out of the room. ####. The weather in early May was the most comfortable period of the year. The cold winter had long passed, but the hot summer was still far away. Although a trace of heat could already be felt in the air, it only brought a comfortable feeling of warmth. It did not make people feel hot. Such a period was originally the time when people were most energetic, and it was also the time when it was easiest to do something. In May, a series of events and signs seemed to prove this point. On the 1st of May, the Principality of Constantine's parliament passed the New Energy Plan with a unanimous vote. This so-called New Energy Plan was actually proposed by New Flyer. It was to fully promote the long-distance magic transmission technology in the Principality of Constantine, finally allowing the long-distance magic transmission network in the Principality of Constantine to cover the entire country. It would allow all the magic machines to find a long-distance magic transmission port at any time, allowing them to work without any hindrances without magic crystals. The reason why this plan was called the New Energy Plan and not directly called the Long-Distance Magic Transmission Network Promotion Plan was because the most important part of this plan was to use the long-distance magic transmission network to increase the efficiency of magic crystals, allowing them to use magic energy more efficiently and more conservatively. There were quite a few people who were doubtful about this. It was fine to use magic crystals more efficiently, but conserving them? There were magic crystals everywhere. They couldn't be used at all. So what was there to conserve? On the 3rd of May, the Kamla Empire's parliament made a final decision on the group coma incident in Shadamla town, confirming the results of the investigation. In view of the hidden dangers of the magic air compressor module and the magic air conditioner, the Kamla Empire ordered the companies that produce the magic air conditioners to make changes to their products to ensure that similar problems wouldn't occur in the future. On the 4th of May, the Rio Tinto Chamber of Commerce was the first to respond to the Kamla Empire's parliament. The Rio Tinto Chamber of Commerce said that they would stop selling all the magic air conditioners equipped with a magic air compressor module made by New Flyer. At the same time, they announced that they had made a breakthrough in the magic air compressor module and that they would be releasing a new magic air conditioner equipped with a new magic air compressor module by the end of the year. On the 6th of May, the Kamla Empire's Magic Machine Industry Department issued an announcement. They would be investigating all the magic machines in the Kamla Empire to avoid any hidden dangers like the magic air compressor module. Over the next few days, the various magic machine companies in the Kamla Empire all responded. They expressed that they would cooperate with the investigation of the Kamla Empire's Magic Machine Industry Department. On the 10th of May, New Flyer responded to the Kamla Empire for the first time. New Flyer's official statement was that after New Flyer's internal tests, it was proven that the magic air compressor module didn't have any hidden dangers that could cause people to fall unconscious. The Kamla Empire's accusations were all lies. In the statement, the Frestec Chamber of Commerce gave all kinds of incomparably accurate data, as well as the more complete results of the experiments. It showed that the experiments were conducted in the same environment as Kidamlu town, but there had never been a similar situation. At the same time, New Flyer also gave some data on the group coma incident in Shadamla town. The data showed that in the days after the group coma incident in Shadamla town, the magic space around Shadamla town was in an abnormal state. However, this abnormal state wasn't related to the magic air conditioner, the magic supply station, or the magic transmission network. New Flyer didn't give any specific results or answers in the statement, but everyone knew that New Flyer was clearly saying that there was a plot behind the Shadamla town incident. Chapter 12:16. A normal-looking Xinfei brand magic sedan slowly stopped, and when the door opened, Su-Yi came out of the driver's seat. The people who quickly passed by didn't pay any attention to Su-Yi and the magic sedan, so Su-Yi wasn't recognized at all. Seeing this, Su-Yi couldn't help smiling. If it was 10 years ago, because the magic sedan was very expensive and the production rate wasn't high, even if one had money, they might not be able to buy it. So to be able to own a magic sedan, they were all important people with prestige. If one came out of a magic sedan at that time, even if they were just a driver, they would definitely attract the attention of the people around them. But now that more than 10 years had passed, although the magic sedan in signs wasn't as common as the cars on Earth, it wasn't anything special, so naturally it wouldn't attract the attention of the people like before. Of course, if Su-Yi drove the Ambia Goddess Series magic sedan that the Xinfei Magic Car Chamber of Commerce released this year, it would definitely attract everyone's attention. This Goddess Series magic sedan was the top magic sedan that the Xinfei Magic Car Chamber of Commerce had. There were only 1,000 of them each year, and each one was for the top people of the country, so normal people definitely wouldn't be able to obtain one. When Su-Yi was still the New Flyers chairman, if he went to a formal event, he would take the Ambia Goddess Series magic sedan that was custom-made for him. But after he stepped down, that magic sedan was given to Freya by him. Because Freya didn't like the stable appearance of that magic sedan, it had been a long time since anyone had seen it. The magic sedan that Su-Yi was driving now was a very normal Xinfei Carlo Series magic sedan with an average price of less than 500 gold coins. It was a magic sedan that was specially made for commoners, so it didn't have any special features at all. This kind of magic sedan naturally wouldn't attract people's attention, and Su-Yi coming out of this car naturally wouldn't attract anyone's attention. But for Su-Yi, this phenomenon was a fact that made him happy. It was that the magic sedans to the people of the Signs continent were no longer as strange as they were 10 years ago. This was enough to prove how quickly the magic machine industry had developed in the past 10 years, so people had quickly gotten used to this change. When he looked around, he could see that a few people were holding a small and exquisite magic communicator in their hands. They were talking about something as they walked. Mobile magical communication was something that had only been popularized on a large scale 7 years ago. Now, it was basically commonplace. Apart from these, the building in front of Su-Yi had a total of 17 floors, and the tallest one was more than 50 meters above the ground. It could also be considered as a major manifestation of the development of the magic machine industry. This kind of building that reached into the sky, it was something that they wouldn't have dared imagine 20 years ago. But now, with the help of the large-scale magic machines, the construction technology had greatly improved. This kind of building was no longer a myth and had become a reality. Looking around, in the second largest city in the Kanla Empire's Inzoli province, Ramasia City, there were many buildings of the same height or even higher. It was like there was a forest of tall buildings in the city. Seeing that it wasn't that different from a modern city on Earth, Su-Yi couldn't help feeling a bit of accomplishment. If it wasn't for him and the new flyer bringing the magic machine industry, it would have taken at least 1,000 years for the Signs to have this kind of scene. After looking around in appreciation, Su-Yi walked into the building with a faint smile. Because he came alone this time, and he was wearing normal clothes, no one noticed him on the way. He smoothly walked to the reception desk on the first floor of the building. "Hello, mister. Is there something I can help you with?" The receptionist looked at Su-Yi with a bit of doubt in her eyes. This handsome young man in front of her, why did he seem so familiar? "Is great magician Telesier here? I have something I need to talk to him about." Su-Yi said, "Great magician Telesier?" The receptionist looked over Su-Yi, and her heart was filled with even more doubt. Great magician Telesier was the most famous great magician in Ramasia City. Those who were qualified to talk to him were all important people in the city or even the entire Inzoli province. However, although this young man in front of her didn't seem normal, he was still too young. It wasn't possible for him to be related to great magician Telesier, right? Although she thought so, the receptionist still asked politely according to the procedure, "Do you have an appointment?" "No." Su-Yi shook his head and said with a smile, but I believe that great magician Telesir will be very happy to see me. The smile on the receptionist's face immediately became forced. There were too many people who wanted to see great magician Telesir. Among them, there were quite a few people who were as confident as Sue. I'm sorry, if you don't have an appointment, I'm afraid I can't let you see great magician Telesir. The receptionist firmly shook her head. Give me my name and inform great magician Telesir. He will come see me. The smile on Suyi's face became even more confident. The receptionist knit her brows. This young man didn't know what was good for him. She had already rejected him, so why was he still bothering her? But seeing the clean smile on Suyi's face, the receptionist hesitated a bit before asking, "Then may I ask your name, Sue?" Sue replied with a smile. Sue? The receptionist blinked. She was a bit surprised at first, but then her eyes suddenly opened wide as she came to her senses. No wonder he looked so familiar. So he really was Sue. The receptionist opened her eyes wide and stared at Suyi's face for a while. She finally matched the face in front of her with the face she had seen in the Magic Illusion news several times. God above, you really are Sue. The receptionist was so excited that she didn't know what to do. Her body swayed left and right, not knowing what to do for a while. Sue helplessly shook his head and knocked on the table. Please help me contact great magician Telesir. All right. I'll contact His Excellency Great Magician. He will definitely be very happy to see you. The receptionist replied, while quickly turning on the magic communication device at the reception desk. Suyi's lips curled into a smile as he thought the exact opposite. Great Magician Telesir definitely wouldn't be happy to see him this time. After a while, there was a clearly raised voice that came from the magic communication device. Sue? Why is he here? Great Magician Telesir, I am Sue. If you have time, can we talk? Sue raised his voice with a smile as he spoke to the magic communication device in front of the receptionist. The magic communication device was silent for a bit before Great Magician Telesir's calm voice sounded again. Let him in. After a while, Sue was in a large office on the top floor of the building. He saw the owner of the building, who was also the owner of the Alturas Array Design Chamber of Commerce, Great Magician Telesir. Chairman Sue, I never thought that you would grace us with your presence. It really makes me feel surprised and pleasantly surprised. When he saw Sue, Great Magician Telesir immediately came out from behind the desk and warmly welcomed him. While saying this, he looked to the left and right of Sue and asked in a surprised voice, Chairman Sue, did you come alone this time? I came this time to talk to you about some private matters, so of course I can't bring too many people. Sue said with a smile. Or could it be, Great Magician Telesir, you're willing to let more people know about this matter? Great Magician Telesir's expression changed before he revealed a smile. Chairman Sue, you're quite humorous. Could it be that what I've done is shameful? Of course there is. What you did at Chidamla Town, could it be that you want everyone to know about it? Great Magician Telesir's expression changed as he stared at Sue. When he was about to speak, he was cut off by Sue. Don't avoid it. Since I've already come here, of course I've already investigated it. Great Magician Telesir, last December, you received a commission from the Kamla Empire's military and developed a special magic array for them, right? Great Magician Telesir remained silent. It's fine if you don't want to answer. After all, you've already signed a confidentiality agreement with the military and can't reveal it. I won't force you to say it. Sue, he didn't mind at all as he said with a smile. I came this time to make you make a choice. Great Magician Telesir remained silent for a while before slowly saying, If you want me to betray the Empire, then please leave. I definitely won't agree. How could I force you to betray your country? Sue, he shook his head. The choice I want you to make isn't as serious and terrifying as you think. Actually, the choice is very simple. The first choice is to continue working with the Kamla Empire's military and develop new military magic machines for them. I didn't help them develop military magic machines. Great Magician Telesir angrily said. Really? Sue, he looked at him with a smile. After a while, Great magician Teleucir lowered his head in disappointment. I didn't know what they wanted to do in the beginning. This doesn't seem like something a famous great magician should say. He said with a sigh. No matter what, since you've already done it, then you have to bear the consequences. The second choice I'll give you is to work with New Flyer and solve the problem of the magic machines being affected by the outside world's magic fluctuations. When he heard Yi say work with New Flyer, great magician Teleucir's face turned ashen, but when he heard Yi's final words, he raised his head in surprise. You only want me to work with you on this? Yi shrugged. What else do you think? Great magician Teleucir deeply knit his brows. He stared at Yi for a while, but he couldn't see anything strange from Yi's expression. In the end, he could only reveal a bitter smile. Can I not choose? Yi's lips cracked open, revealing a mouthful of white teeth, as well as a very kind smile. What do you think? Chapter 12:17. In a large amount of attention-grabbing news between the Kamla Empire and New Flyer, the famous Alturas Array, Design Chamber of Commerce, in the Kamla Empire's Inzoli province announced that they were cooperating with New Flyer, helping New Flyer's magic machines design a device that could block magic signals. This news didn't attract that much attention. After all, New Flyer had always cooperated with many companies related to the magic machine industry, so it wasn't a big deal to have one more. Compared to this, what people paid more attention to was of course the New Flyer and the Kamla Empire's side sticking to their own version of the Chidamla town incident, even arguing with each other and clashing with each other. The Kamla Empire's side said that the reason for the Chidamla town incident was because of the special magic fluctuations in the magic air conditioner, which was combined with the long-distance magic transmission technology. But New Flyer completely denied this, and said that this was just the Kamla Empire's side of the story, so they couldn't believe it at all. New Flyer also accused the Kamla Empire of taking care of the magic air conditioner and the people related to the Chidamla town incident, making it so that people couldn't investigate further. They couldn't obtain the exact results and couldn't give a detailed analysis of the cause of this matter, so they couldn't find out what was going on. In each announcement that New Flyer made, although they didn't directly say that this matter was the Kamla Empire's plot, as long as one was involved in this matter and saw the report from both sides, it was very easy for them to have this feeling. Because the Frestec Chamber of Commerce had done their own experiments, giving them incomparably detailed data analysis and reasoning, clearly telling people what didn't make sense in this matter. The Kamla Empire always emphasized that their investigation was correct, but they didn't give any data to support it. Because they didn't give a direct answer to New Flyer's questions, naturally people didn't think that this was very credible. Comparing the two, as time passed, the influence of the Chidamla town incident gradually faded. The long-distance magic transmission technology that New Flyer was promoting in the Principality of Constantine was already showing results. Over 70% of the citizens of the Principality of Constantine were already using the long-distance magic transmission technology, so they didn't need to worry about buying magic crystals anymore. In this large-scale promotion, there had never been an incident like the Chidamla town incident where the citizens fainted. Like this, people became less and less convinced of the results of the Kamla Empire's investigation. Instead, they became very interested in the long-distance magic transmission technology that New Flyer was promoting on a large scale. According to the data that New Flyer released after the large-scale promotion in the Principality of Constantine, if it was a family that had a full set of Shinfei brand household magic machines, they would spend around 3 to 5 gold coins a month on magic crystals. But now that they were using the long-distance magic transmission technology, the cost would drop to around 1 gold coin a month. Although it seemed like they were only saving a few gold coins, for a normal family, the cost of a few gold coins couldn't be ignored. So just based on this, it was enough for many citizens to look forward to the promotion of this technology. Entering August, it had been half a year since the Chidamla town incident. New Flyer announced to the public that they had signed a cooperation agreement with 17 countries, including the Malar Empire, the Lampari Kingdom, and the Kingdom of Ruhr. They would be promoting the long-distance magic transmission network in these 17 countries. Once this result was announced, it was equal to announcing that the Kamla Empire's accusation of New Flyer regarding the Chidamla Town incident had been shattered. If the Kamla Empire's accusation was true, were these 17 countries stupid? Would they let the citizens of their countries fall into this kind of danger? And after New Flyer announced this, the Kamla Empire fell into an awkward situation. In the past, once New Flyer announced that they would vigorously promote a certain technology, they would first confirm the cooperation with the two empires, the Lampari Kingdom and the Kingdom of Ruhr, and then promote it in these countries before promoting it to the entire signs. But this time, New Flyer announced cooperation with the Malar Empire, the Lampari Kingdom, and the Kingdom of Ruhr, but only the Kamla Empire was left out. And because of the Chidamla Town incident, the Kamla Empire had launched a lot of attacks on the long-distance magic transmission technology and even denounced it as a killing network. Of course, it was impossible for them to turn around and run to cooperate with New Flyer in this regard. So this time, in New Flyer's large-scale promotion of this technology in signs, the Kamla Empire could only watch from the sidelines and couldn't participate. At the same time, in order to fully promote the long-distance magic transmission technology, New Flyer, the Continental Sorcerers Guild, the Continental Magic Industry Technology Fund, and others jointly announced a new magic industry standard. In this standard, in order to cooperate with the long-distance magic transmission technology that was about to be promoted in signs, all magic machines would be modified accordingly. A port for connecting to the long-distance magic transmission and a standard module for running magic power would be added, which was the integration into the long-distance magic transmission network proposed by New Flyer, or network integration for short. Regarding this new standard, the various magic machine chambers of commerce in the other countries on the continent responded one after another. As for the Kamla Empire's Chamber of Commerce, they didn't dare to recognize this new standard because of the stance of the Kamla Empire's Parliament and Ministry of Magic Industry in the Chidamla Town incident. Naturally, they couldn't produce magic machines under the new standard. So in just 2 months, the various magic machine chambers of commerce in the Kamla Empire had a large drop in sales. And because these magic machine chambers of commerce were involved in all aspects of the Kamla Empire's magic machine industry, their product sales had a large drop, which greatly affected the Kamla Empire as a whole. The Kamla Empire that had been vigorously developing the magic machine industry in the past 10 years had a large number of magic machine industry-related companies go bankrupt because of this. There was even a wave of unemployment that appeared for the first time. After the Kamla Empire situation was reported by the major newspapers, everyone thought of the Marlow Magic Kingdom from before. The Marlow Magic Kingdom had offended the New Flyer, causing the New Flyer to withdraw from the Marlow Magic Kingdom. Then the country fell into chaos, and there was also a wave of unemployment. Now the Kamla Empire had a bad relationship with the New Flyer because of the Chidamla Town incident. Although the New Flyer didn't withdraw from the Kamla Empire like the Marlow Magic Kingdom, with just this one action, there was a wave of unemployment in the Kamla Empire. People naturally thought that the Kamla Empire would be like the Marlow Magic Kingdom, falling into chaos and being plundered by other countries. It had to be known that the Malar Empire and the Kamla Empire had formed an alliance 12 years ago to resist the invasion of the New Flyer and the Kingdom of Ruhr. Then they've been peacefully coexisting for the past 10 years, even cooperating in many ways. But these two empires had never been true allies. It could even be said that they were mortal enemies most of the time. If the Kamla Empire fell into chaos, the Malar Empire wouldn't mind stepping on them. From another point of view, this time, it showed the New Flyer's strong influence on the signs. If it was any other company being targeted by the Kamla Empire like this, or even being forced to give up the large market in the Kamla Empire, it would be a disaster for them. However, the New Flyer's attitude was firm from beginning to end. Although they did lose a part of the Kamla Empire's household magic machine market, because of the rules set by the Kamla Empire's Parliament and the Magic Machine Industry Department, it didn't have any decisive effect on the New Flyer. Rather, because the Kamla Empire was too focused on the New Flyer, It made the other countries and companies lose confidence in the Kanla Empire, causing them to fall into a predicament. This time, the New Flyer didn't send out the New Flyer Guards like 12 years ago. They didn't even send out a single soldier. They only made a few moves, and the Kanla Empire suffered a great loss. If the New Flyer really wanted to deal with the Kanla Empire would suffer an even greater tragedy. Of course, the Kanla Empire was one of the two empires after all. Its national strength was far stronger than the Mana Magic Kingdom. In addition, it had been sparing no effort to develop the magic machine industry for more than 10 years. It had already formed a very deep foundation. Although it suffered a great loss because of the Chidamla Town incident, the Kanla Empire had thick skin and flesh. It wouldn't really fall into turmoil or even chaos like the Mana Magic Kingdom. Everyone believed that as long as the Kanla Empire didn't continue to target the New Flyer, then a New Flyer definitely wouldn't completely give up the huge market in the Kanla Empire. In the end, a company as large as the New Flyer wasn't much different from a country. There was no enmity between the two countries, only benefits. As long as the New Flyer and the Kanla Empire both recognized that the other could bring them indispensable benefits, then what problem couldn't be solved? However, accidents always happen in this world. October 17th, it was a very normal day that didn't have anything special at all. The Kanla Empire's garrison in the Northeast Province charged into the New Flyer's magic crystal mine in the Kanla Empire's Northeast Province, engaging in a fierce exchange of fire with the New Flyer Guards. In the end, the Northeast Province garrison that had 3 times the number of New Flyer Guards was completely wiped out by the intense firepower of the New Flyer Guards. Chapter 12:18. Who can tell me this? Just what is going on? The Kandra Emperor's face was calm, and his tone was even calmer, looking no different from normal. However, it was this calmness that made the entire hall fall into a very low atmosphere. The loyal ministers of the Kandra Empire, standing in the hall, often interacted with the Emperor, so of course they knew that for this honorable Emperor to act this normal at this time, it meant that his heart was filled with rage. The ministers all had their heads down, not daring to move at all. Even the sound of their breathing was very low, afraid that they would attract the Emperor's attention. However, just because they didn't say anything, it didn't mean that they could escape. The Kandra Emperor looked over the ministers with their heads down and gave a cold snort. He looked at the Kanla Empire's current Prime Minister, Grand Duke Rostov, who was closest to him. Rostov, tell me, why did those bastards from a northeast province have the guts to open fire on a mine in the Empire's territory? Could it be that they want to rebel? A strange look appeared in Grand Duke Rostov's eyes. The main point of this matter was that the Northeast Province's army wasn't attacking a normal mine. Rather, it was the mine under New Flyer's name. Now that the Emperor had purposely ignored this, and even gave the Northeast Province's army the title of rebels, it could be seen that the Emperor had some scruples in his heart. Of course, the Emperor definitely wouldn't admit it, so it was impossible for him, as the Prime Minister, to reveal the Emperor's thoughts in front of everyone. Thinking about it, Grand Duke Rostov replied, "Your Majesty, I think that Duke Tim isn't that bold. This should be the result of the judgment of the Northeast Province's subordinates." Their own judgment? The Kandra Emperor suddenly raised his voice. Who gave them the right to make their own judgment? This is clearly a rebellion. Since the Emperor had emphasized twice that the troops of the Northeast Province that attacked the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's magic crystal mine were rebelling, how could the loyal ministers not understand what the Emperor was thinking? They all quickly responded, "That's right. Your Majesty, these soldiers actually attacked the Empire's mines without orders. They must already be plotting something. Fortunately, they've all died in the crossfire with the new. This saves the Empire the effort to eliminate them." Grand Duke Rostov glanced at the Speaker of the Imperial Parliament, Duke Infante, and sneered in his heart. Since Duke Finnard had a close personal relationship with Duke Tim, the governor of the Northeast Province, he would certainly try his best to help Duke Tim get out of this matter. But the Emperor made it clear that he did not want to make a big fuss out of it. and Grand Duke Rostov was well aware that it was best to minimize the problem and to settle the matter as soon as possible. Although the Empire had been at odds with the Frestek Chamber of Commerce during this time, and the Emperor had expressed his impatience with the Frestek Chamber of Commerce many times, the Empire was far from completely breaking off relations with the Frestek Chamber of Commerce. If the relationship between the two sides was seriously damaged or even broken because of this incident, the losses the Empire would suffer would be unbearable. The Emperor was very clear on this, which was why he had defined the soldiers attacking the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's magic crystal mine as rebellion. President Infanard is right. As the Empire's soldiers, they actually dared to attack without orders. No matter what the reason is, this is equal to rebellion. I hope that His Majesty will give the order as soon as possible and order the Northeast Province to investigate this matter, giving the citizens of the Northeast Province an explanation. The Kandra Emperor looked at Grand Duke Rostov with a trace of praise in his eyes. When Grand Duke Garba left, he had recommended Grand Duke Rostov to take over the position of Prime Minister. He had been very close to his heart in the past few years, and other than his ability being a bit lacking, he was a very reliable choice for Prime Minister. Since the Emperor, the Prime Minister, and the Speaker had all expressed their opinions, and there were no different opinions, this matter had already been decided. Even if the others had other thoughts, they could only keep it in their hearts. Just as everyone was quickly discussing how to deal with this matter, a chamberlain hurriedly walked in. "Your Majesty, we've already connected to Duke Tim." His Majesty the Kandra Emperor and Grand Duke Rostov exchanged glances, then nodded to the chamberlain. "Bring it here." The servant quickly left. After a while, on the table in front of the Kandra Emperor, there was a faint red light that lit up. The Kandra Emperor pressed the button, and a light screen appeared on the right side of the hall. Duke Tim's magic image appeared on the light screen. "Your Majesty." Duke Tim's side clearly saw the situation on this side, so he gave a bow to the Kandra Emperor before nodding to the other ministers. Seeing Duke Tim's lifelike image and seeing that there should be a mind behind him, the Kandra Emperor gave a sigh in his heart. Being able to talk to Duke Tim, who was over 2,000 kilometers away, and even being able to see Duke Tim's image. This was the convenience brought by the new flyer. If it was before, if he wanted to receive a report from Duke Tim, he would have to wait at least a week. Since he had already enjoyed the convenience of the new magic technology brought by the new flyer, even the Kandra Emperor wasn't willing to return to his previous life, not to mention the other citizens of the Empire. Thinking of the newspapers in the Empire that called for the new flyer to be expelled, the Kandra Emperor couldn't help giving a bitter laugh in his heart. It would be good if it was that simple. Expelling the new flyer from the Kanla Empire was easy to say, but it was almost impossible to do. The various industries of the Frestek Chamber of Commerce had already entered the lives of all the citizens of the Empire. From the industries of the Empire to the lives of the citizens, they were all related to the Frestek Chamber of Commerce to varying degrees. Even if he, as the Emperor, was dissatisfied that he had to consider the new flyer, he had to be careful when dealing with a new flyer. How could he casually call for the new flyer to be expelled? Thinking of this, the Kandra Emperor looked at Duke Tim with a helpless gaze, and there was only a small bit of anger that was revealed. "Tim, do you have a result?" As soon as this matter happened in the Northeast Province, the Northeast Province had reported it layer by layer. In the end, the upper echelons of the Empire learned about it in just 2 days. On the day of this matter, Duke Tim, who was the governor of the Northeast Province, had rushed to the location of this matter, the Baimeng Mine in the northwest corner of the Northeast Province. It was already the 2nd day after the incident. The mine behind Duke Tim should be the Baimeng Mine. "Your Majesty, according to my initial understanding, this matter should be caused by the new Duke Tim. Could it be that it wasn't the soldiers who wanted to rebel and attack the Baimeng Mine?" Duke Ferdinand quickly cut Duke Tim off. Duke Tim was a bit surprised before quickly reacting. His eyes turned, and after being silent for a bit, he gave a slight nod. "It is indeed like the Sir Speaker said. According to the report, some soldiers were dissatisfied with their treatment in the army, so they gathered to cause trouble. They also heard that the Baimeng Mine was owned by the Xinfei Chamber of Commerce, so they felt that there must be quite a bit of wealth here, so they came here to rob it. As for whether they wanted to rebel or not, I don't dare determine. Of course, His Majesty and the ministers of the empire could label those soldiers as rebels. However, as the governor of the Northeast province, if his soldiers intended to rebel, he would not be able to get away with it no matter what. Therefore, Duke Tim had to make an excuse for himself first. The Kandra Emperor knit his brows as he looked at Duke Ferdinand. He was a bit dissatisfied that this parliament speaker had such a close relationship with the governor of the Northeast province. But now wasn't the time to care about this. He thought about it before asking Duke Tim, "How are the losses at the Baiming mine? How do they react to this matter?" The losses at the mine. Currently, there are 16 workers who have died, 37 workers who have been heavily injured, and over 100 workers with light injuries. The losses in terms of goods are. What about the losses of the new flyer guards? The Kandra Emperor cut off Duke Tim's words. Hearing this question, the other ministers of the Kamla Empire were all shocked. They focused on Duke Tim in a magic illusion. The new flyer guards. Duke Tim paused as a strange and bitter look appeared on his face. There were only 2 guards who were lightly injured. There were no other losses. Oh, hearing this answer, everyone in the hall let out a sigh of relief, and their expressions became much more relaxed. No matter how many workers died at the mine, it wasn't a problem for these important people. They were just normal citizens, so they couldn't cause any trouble. But the Frestac Chamber of Commerce guard station at the mine was a completely different matter. First, the new flyer guards were official employees of the new flyer. They were different from the normal workers who were temporarily hired to work at the mine. They didn't have a strict relationship with the new flyer. So even if the workers suffered heavy losses, it wasn't related to the new flyer at all. But if the new flyer guards suffered heavy losses, and some guards were even killed, the new flyer wouldn't let this matter rest. Second, the new flyer guards represented the armed forces of the new flyer, which was different from the normal employees of the new flyer. Exchanging fire with the new flyer guards, and even killing new flyer guards, was equal to declaring war on the new flyer, which had a completely different meaning. It had to be known, the people who had declared war on the new flyer before had all paid a painful price. The one who suffered the most was the Kamla Empire from 12 years ago. However, after relaxing, the Kandra Emperor and the ministers all felt a bit of humiliation in their hearts. Since when did the great Kamla Empire have to worry about the loss of a company? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.